Devil, Isobu. Is that really you? Naruto questioned again as he lowered himself into view of the giant turtle's face. The massive behemoth continued to stare forward blankly and didn't even seem to register that Naruto was in front of him. The blonde devil persisted. It's me, Naruto. Remember, I'm Kurama's vessel? Naruto? Rias hesitantly called out as her boyfriend continued to scream and wave his arms in front of the giant unknown creature summoned by their archenemy. Maybe don't scream at the monster right in front of its face? No, he isn't a monster, Naruto said before considering. Okay, yeah, he is totally a monster. But he's a friend. Someone from my world. Wake up, man. Senpai, Kaneko called out, Isobu, it's me. Say something already. Akano palmed her face and sighed. He's gone insane. Insane, and he's going to die now. Naruto, let me talk to him. The blonde lifted up his arm and pointed his sacred gear at the giant turtle. Isobu. The turtle reacted to its name being called out and turned to them as if it finally registered what was happening. Listen to me, you giant blubbering oaf. It's me, Kurama. I'm speaking out of a remote on Naruto's arm. And believe me, that is just the tip of the iceberg of weird that's happening. It's been almost 2 years since our fight with Madara and the Jubi, and you've been missing this entire time. I know you must be confused. But give me a chance to explain and it should clear a few things up. Isobu stilled and stared at them as they waited for a response. Okay, now, this world we're in, the giant turtle reared back and lifted its head. Naruto paled. Kurama. He was always a little thicker than the rest of us. Maybe give me another sec too. Isobu opened his mouth wide. Oh shit, get the fuck out of the way. Naruto's wings clapped furiously and he flew through the air as quickly as he could. The orc that had been watching in stunned silence quickly flew aside the moment they saw the giant monster make a move. A low rumble shook the ground under the turtle as it prepared to attack. Shalba watched with a satisfied smile, and all is right with the world. An intense stream of highly focused water shot out of the turtle's mouth at indescribable speeds. The pressurized stream traveled hundreds to thousands of meters away. Isobu jerked his head and dragged the water stream over the horizon. Wherever the stream hit, the water vaporized everything in its path. After a full minute, the turtle stopped firing its stream and let the water rain down over the massive area it covered. The three-tailed beast reared back its head and roared loud enough to shake the very air. Devil, Odin stopped in his joyful display of wanton destruction and havoc to witness the stream of water streak across the sky. The ancient being was pleasantly surprised as the water obliterated everything in its path. And when it was done, he found himself being rained upon by the remains of the attack. Such a powerful display of power so quickly, and from a being he was so unfamiliar with. Odin hummed and rubbed his beard. This might not have been a total waste of time after all. Devil. The orc members reconvened on the side of the mountainous hill they were summoned upon and made their way through the rain. Most of the group were catching their breathing and reeling from the shock of the beast that had attacked them. Gasper was close to hyperventilating from shock, and Issei kept Asia close to his chest for fear of losing her in the panic. Naruto landed back down beside all of them, panting lightly after the scare dodging the attack had given him. Is everyone alright? Naruto, Rias was catching her breath, her hair matted down by the temporary rainfall and a stern look on her face. What was that? That's Isobu, Kurama's brother, he answered, gauging the looks of surprise on their faces. I thought he was dead with the rest of them, but somehow he's here. What the hell, senpai? Issei came marching over to his whiskered companion in his scale mail and complained. You were just buzzing around in that thing's face like a fly. It could have killed you. No, he wouldn't. He's a friend. I don't know what's wrong with him, but he needs help. Did you see the size of that thing? When you said you had a fox in your stomach, you could have told us it was the size of a fucking kaiju. They're called Biju. And Isobu was pretty much the most harmless out of all of them. Harmless? He's a giant reptile. Comes out of the water, shoots beams out of his mouth. He's fucking Godzilla. I don't even know what that means. It isn't great. Enough. Rias yelled and quickly stepped up between her pawns. She let out a heavy sigh and shook her head before looking back up the mountain at the beast they could see cresting the edge of the peak. Obviously we are all a little frazzled by what we're dealing with. Naruto, can you think of any way it is possible for Shalba Beelzebub to have his hands on that creature? None. Naruto shook his head, and I don't know why but Isobu isn't listening to anything we say. Then it looks like we will have to fend him off ourselves. What can you tell us about its capabilities? He's very tough and durable, like a giant turtle. Pretty much. Kurama, can you help us? If Isobu isn't in control of himself at the moment, then he's an extremely dangerous entity to deal with. He can take a lot of damage, control water to create powerful attacks, and spin to attack with his shell. Oh, and if he reels his head back and starts making a black ball in his mouth, just get away as fast as you can. That does not inspire confidence. Akano drawled before looking up the massive hill, so we had to deal with either a giant monstrous turtle that attack us, or a scorned devil that is nearly a match for Searsex-sama. Yuto felt a migraine coming in. I'll be honest, neither leaves me with much hope for our situation. But on the bright side we have a new secret weapon to carry much of the burden for us if things take a turn. We do? Issei exclaimed, shocked and hopeful that something could handle the trouble they had found themselves stuck in. What is it? All eyes were on Issei, and his fancy new red armor he had gotten from finally accessing the power of his heavenly dragon. Oh fuck, this really came back to bite me. It'll be fine, senpai. Kaneko encouraged her perverted upperclassmen. You've always been able to take a beating no matter how bad it got. Now you can take a beating with the power of the Sekiryute. Just imagine how much punishment you can take. But I'm still getting beaten. It'll be okay, senpai. Gasper nodded. You're a dragon type which is strong against water type turtles. Just don't use your fire on him or anything. There isn't a poke center to fix me up if that thing hits me. Yasuke. A panicked sigh echoed inside the armor's helmet as Issei grumbled. Diedrich, what do you think about all this? This is an unfortunate situation we are in right now, partner. You have realized a great and magnificent power with your balance breaker, but I don't think it is a good idea to cut your teeth against a Mao-level opponent or a creature from another world. However, it doesn't seem like we have much of a choice. You should have a much easier time handling fights now, but with the caliber of enemy you found yourself against. Cross my fingers and hope for the best? Pretty much. Alright, enough dawdling. We need to focus up on what's important, Rias said, pointing back up at the giant turtle roaring and firing more blasts of water indiscriminately. She wiped the hair out of her eyes and spoke with determination in her voice. Shalba Beelzebub and this Isobu are going to come looking for us soon enough. So we have to face them, and preferably with a plan so we all make it out of this. Naruto nodded and looked up at the rainfall created by Isobu's wild attacks. It was such a shock to see one of the Biju still alive after all this time, and it broke his heart that the poor beast wasn't in control and not reacting to anything they said. But in the back of his mind a worse idea formed. What were the chances that it was only Isobu that had been resurrected like this? Devil, NYAHHHHHH. Move. Azazel's order caused them all to break apart or lift off as the giant cat snarled and breathed a massive stream of fire. The blue flames danced through the streets and filled the block with blistering heat. The city streets looked like a sea of blue flames before they slowly smothered out and left a huge area of scorch marks over the ground they had burned. Azazel and Searsex looked down at the damage caused by the flames. The concrete was scorched and warped and the glass in the surrounding buildings had melted away. And they had a sinking feeling this wasn't the full power the monster cat could unleash. Are you afraid? That's good. Croisery mocked whilst atop the rabid cat he had summoned to attack them. The blue two-tailed creature looked crazed and ravenous as it panted and twitched, growling and letting small puffs of fire out with each breath. The Mao descendant smirked while standing on the monster cat's back. Good. I truly hope that the last moments I can spare you in this life are filled with nothing else but terror and agony. And I finally get to experience that glory because of this delightful little monster. That's one hell of a gift Ophis has given you. Azazel said as some sweat built up on his brow, both from the tension and the sheer heat rising up from the street below them. When did it start to dabble in creating new life? What is that thing? A construct or homunculus or what? I'm not sure. I don't look a gift dragon god in the mouth. All I know is that these creatures have immense power. It can be given to lesser beings to increase their ability. The Asmodeus devil raised his hand. A series of magical circles forming over his arm as similar patterns appeared over the cat's body. It convulsed and tensed before throwing back its head and roaring at the top of its lungs, and we can make them do whatever we want. Fire built up in the cat's maw before releasing upwards at the devil and fallen angel in a stream of intense flames. Watch out! Before Azazel or Sirzex could retaliate, Rosweiss flew in from between them and summoned many magic circles to defend against the fire. They created a wall which the flames pressed against but couldn't get through. However, Rosweiss's expression was pinched as she struggled to hold off the intense flames from getting any further. Now. Ha! Irina dropped down from above and lobbed several weapons of light at Croisery while he was distracted. She believed she had succeeded, but the older devil simply raised his other hand and countered the dangerous weapons with an attack of his own. Irina gasped in shock as the villainous devil turned his spiteful gaze up at her before raising his controlling hand in her direction. The giant blue cat turned its flames upward and spewed the intense hellfire her way. Sirzex sped up and appeared in front of the angel, blocking the fires with a magic circle of his own. "TCH, you protect an angel," one of Michael's lackeys, Croisery spat. "You dare call yourself a devil? My, you have such an old world view of things." The Mount Ascendant raised his arms and blocked the sudden attack at his side that sent him flying off the cat and through the air. His wings spread out from his back and halted his violent launch backwards. He balanced himself in the air and glared hatefully at the figure that attacked him. "I have a pure world view of things. A view that was shared by you and many others not so long ago." Fair enough. It wasn't that long ago that I was looking to prolong the war either, but now I'm trying to make a new world with others. Azazel spun his golden spear in his hand, donning his mighty gold and purple armor from his artificial sacred gear with the power of the Dragon King, Fafnir, to bolster him. The Governor-General pointed the tip of his golden spear at the Mao Descendant, and I'm not going to let some pissy little brat that feels entitled to power bring it all crashing down. Oh! A dangerous and malevolent energy started to pour out of the Asomdius, his power bolstered by Ophis Snake. He raised his controlling hand and caused the two-tailed cat to rampage and roar at Sirzex and the others. The devil snarled, "I'm going to rebuild my empire upon the ruins of this city, and the ashes of your remains." Devil, Shalba looked out over the distant horizon as his turtle summon continued to release balls of water out as far as the eye could see. The irritated devil sighed and shook his head. "If they ran away before I could get my hands on them, then I'm going to be quite mad." The devil stood in silence and stared ahead, although I guess I shouldn't be surprised. That girl has the same blood as Sirzex, so it's no shock that she is pathetic and cowardly. Making a brazen statement like she could defeat me and then running away when things didn't look to be going her way. But what was truly idiotic was the idea that she had a chance to stop me even before I summoned the creature to my side. A cowardly little whore like her and her group of blind asses were doomed to die miserably from the moment Shalba immediately turned around and released a ball of fire at his attacker. Yuto's eyes widened in shock and he raised his blade to block the flaming attack. He negated it but was still knocked off his feet by the force behind the flames. While he dropped to the ground, Kaneko and Xenovia leapt up from behind him and charged the Mao Descendant. Shalba easily stepped back and avoided the strikes and swings of the Rook and Knight. The older devil simply dodged and moved out of the way of their attacks, predicting where they were attacking even as they started roaring in anger. Kaneko slammed her fist into the ground when the Beelzebub devil stepped aside and caused the ground to violently explode. She turned while still in the air and started sending the chunks of rock flying his way with a volley of punches. He swatted them away with a single wave of his hand and quickly ducked his head under Yuto's attempt at a sneak attack. "Take this!" The blonde knight placed one hand against the ground and channeled his sacred gear through it. Swords started popping out of the ground violently around the powerful devil. He stepped back casually to avoid the blades sprouting by his feet and raised his leg when one popped up directly under it. He then placed his foot on the tip of the sword and pushed down, breaking the blade as he leaned forward. "If this is really how you want to continue this slaughter, then I am more than happy to." Now, Shalba's eyes widened and he quickly spun around with his arms raised. Issei roared at the top of his lungs and lunged forward with his fist reeled back. He twisted his body and threw a punch, slamming it against Shalba's arms with such intensity it created a shockwave around them. Shalba clenched his teeth and pushed back against the powerful force of the Red Dragon Emperor's fist. He was powerful, but he was a novice and had only just discovered his power. He was no match for Hyah! Naruto leapt up from behind Issei and spun in the air before kicking at the older devil's head. Shalba raised his shoulder before the ninja's foot could be buried in his neck and took the brunt of it against his collar. He was knocked back, digging his feet into the ground before coming to a halt. There was a slight twitch of pain in his shoulder, but Shalba took it in stride and instead looked at the younger devils with eyes of cold murderous rage. Go! Naruto crossed his fingers and summoned 3 clones to join his side as he, Issei, Zenovia, Yuto, and Kaneko charged the Mao. Asia and Gasper peeked up from the side of cliff and watched the intense battle ensue. They flinched with each blow and shockwave that passed over them, but while the wannabe Mao was held back, they looked down and motioned for the others to come up. Akeno, Rias, and the original Naruto flew up from the side of the mountain and into the air. The trio floated in front of Isobu as the turtle wildly jerked around and bucked in place. The 2 women looked concerned by their choice of action before looking at the blonde's back. Naruto, are you sure you can reach through to this thing? I have to try, and what is going to stop it from attacking us again? Nothing, he admitted while looking back over his shoulder, so it would probably be better if you 2 got out of his line of sight. Rias shook her head. If you're here trying to stop this, then I can't abandon you. You'll need help, Akeno happily stated, when this all goes inevitably wrong. Naruto took a deep breath and waved his arms to get the attention of the savage beast. The turtle turned its eye on him and stared blankly ahead. Naruto steeled himself in front of the Biju and raised his hand, creating a Rasengan in his palm. The swirling concentration of chakra reflected in Isobu's eye and seemed to get some semblance of recognition when he did this. Remember this? This is my chakra? We melded ours together once, along with the rest of the Biju, in a desperate fight against Madara, don't you remember? Grr. Please remember, Naruto desperately pleaded to the 3-tailed turtle. I need to help you, I didn't know you were still alive. I had no idea after all this time. I was trying to pull myself back together and you were somewhere else, in the hands of these bastards. Please, let me help you. Magical formations started appearing over the turtle's body and caused the giant beast to writhe and cry in pain. Rias and Akeno flinched back in shock and Naruto's eyes widened in horror. They looked down and spotted Shalba flying over the others for a moment with an outstretched hand. That's my property you're talking to. Shalba squeezed his hand and got a pained reaction from the turtle in response. I'd prefer if you'd stop wasting our time uselessly talking to a mindless abomination so we can focus on how I'll kill each and every one of you. Naruto looked down at the devil. You're controlling him. He heard Isobu cry out and mashed his teeth together. You're torturing him. Of course. It is my tool. It is our right. When I have my rightful place so close in reach, I will use whatever methods or tactics I need to assure I shall covet that throne once more. You fucker. One of the Narutos yelled from the ground and flew up to attack Shalba. The long-haired devil scowled down at the group that opposed his triumph and scoffed. His other hand came out from under his cape and aimed down at them. A myriad of magic circles and spells started to appear around his palm. The Naruto clones continued their mad rush to attack him first while the others beneath them quickly tried to move out of the way. Every element was suddenly released with such power and intensity that it was enough to shake the very space they stood in. Bolts of lightning and wreaths of flame exploded out in a blinding center of light. Yuto used his speed to grab Kaneko by the waist and hoist her up before the attack landed. Zenovia also ran, using Durandal to deflect any stray attack that might have come her way. Asia and Gasper hid back behind the corner of the cliff and covered their ears while the earth-shaking attack collided with the ground. And while the clones were evaporated by the attack, Issei screamed and weathered the torrential magic attacks with his new armor. No! Naruto yelled and tried to reach the man attacking his friends. Shalba lazily waved his hand and forced Isobu to turn towards Naruto and release a blast of water. Akeno and Rias channeled their powers and intercepted the attack before it could reach. The giant water bullet impacted against their shared barrier of demonic power and destruction. The girls struggled to block the force of the attack, but it quickly exploded against their shield and created another impromptu wave of rain over their heads. Get away from them, you smug piece of shit. Shalba looked over as Naruto was heading straight for him with fury in his eyes. He stopped forcing Isobu to attack and flew upwards to avoid the incoming pawn. Naruto looked down to see the results of Shalba's attack. His clones were destroyed. Xenovia, Kaneko, and Yuto were picking themselves up, and Issei's armor had cracked from taking the brunt of the attack on himself. I so do enjoy taking my time to torment and make you lot suffer. But I don't like being interrupted. Shalba groused as he flew over Naruto and along Isobu's shell. That's twice now that you've interrupted me. A lowly little resurrected devil like you should know his place beneath my heel and learn not to interfere. For someone so high and mighty I find it funny you're the one running away, Naruto yelled out as he chased after the Mao descendant. He concentrated his demonic power into his hands and started lobbing orbs of uncontrollable fire and wind at the devil as he tried to catch up with him. What? Saw just how much of a prissy little pussy you actually are in reconsidering this fight? Good news. Release Isobu now and I promise I'll stop beating you once you've finished shitting yourself. Quite a delusion you've settled yourself into, haven't you? The older devil swerved along the surface of the shell and let the elemental attacks explode against it. Shalba smirked arrogantly as he raised his dominating hand again. Must I remind you that if you want to kill me, you may have to resort to killing your friend as well. I won't, I can do it if you need me to, kid. The orc looked back in shock when they saw Odin standing at the foot of the space Isobu had carved away with his arrival. The mighty Norse god had a slightly amused expression as he walked in on the sight of the exhausted young devils. The wannabe king of the underworld. The enraged sage ninja chasing after him. And the immense three-tailed turtle growling threateningly in his direction. Quite the scene I walked into here, huh? Odin-sama. Hentaigami, don't touch that turtle. The battle had paused with the blonde stopping the god from making a move. You sure? Odin pointed his spear at the turtle. He's a big boy but one good shot at its head and… No, don't hurt him. The mighty Odin. For the first time Shalba looked concerned at the sight of the elder deity joining the battle. The Beelzebub devil sweated before shaking his head. I didn't plan today to try and kill a Norse god. Rather I think we should start a little closer to home. Shalba dashed through the air while they were distracted by Odin's arrival. He made way towards Rias and the redhead quickly raised her guard to defend herself. Akeno panicked and flew in front of her to intercept. Bucko-san. Rias, Naruto flew after Shalba but realized he wouldn't make it in time. He reached out. Stop. Stop. Shalba raised his arm and prepared to attack, but froze in midair before he could reach the pure-blooded devil and her queen. Everyone present looked shocked by Shalba's sudden freeze. Naruto looked down at his sacred gear and marveled. For a second, Naruto cut through the sky like a man possessed with Shalba in his sights. He came upon the Mao descendant while he was still prone in time and started unleashing a barrage of punches and strikes against his body. Nothing happened when his attacks landed and there was no impact, but in the few moments Shalba remained frozen Naruto didn't let up. He created a sphere in his hand and shoved it into the devil's chest, Rasengan. After a moment the effect finally ended and Shalba was released from his prison in time. Gah! The Beelzebub devil's body violently jerked around and doubled over with the vicious strikes that landed all at once. A terrible impact nearly split his armor apart and ground itself into his chest as blood spilled out from his mouth. Shalba's wings expanded from his back and stopped his launch backwards, but blood and bruises littered his body as he clutched his chest in pain. Why you cur? Sorry, but I've changed my mind. Naruto snarled while flying in front of Rias and Akeno. No fucking way am I ever going to let you walk away after what you just tried to do. And I wanted to revel in my victory, but now I just have to imagine what your screams of pain and agony sound like. Shalba yelled, spittle and specks of blood flying off his lips before he raised his hand and conjured his control spells again. Isobu flinched and acted up again as he pointed, beast. Obey my wishes. Slaughter these mongrels in an instant. GWOOAHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHNaruto just weathered the overwhelming sound with a frown. He turned in the air and looked up at the giant turtle as it prepared to attack. His breathing started to quicken, damn it. Naruto. Rias reached out. I want to save you, Isobu. I want to stop this bastard from hurting you any further. But I can't do that unless I stop you from hurting my friends. So I don't know what it will take, but I will find a way to help you. His wings spread out behind his back as Naruto glided towards the turtle's head as the beast prepared to attack. Naruto pulled back and slammed his fist down on the turtle's head, stunning it for a moment before he prepared to form another attack. Rasengan, I'm sorry. Naruto, wait. Do it again. He paused when he heard his partner's frantic voice come out from his sacred gear. What? Again. Touch him again. I felt something. He quickly kneeled down on the creature's head and pressed his hand down on its cranium. Kurama, what's happening? Just shut up for a second. I know. I felt something just now. I just need. It was another moment before Naruto finally sensed what it was that Kurama was talking about. There was an odd sensation he could feel from his connection with Kurama, and that odd tingle had something touching the edge of its periphery. He blinked in surprise. Is that? Shut up and don't move. I need to concentrate. You're like an infection. Constantly irritating and never disappearing. Shalba seethed in anger as he looked at Naruto try to do something to his summoned creature. Naruto couldn't move while Kurama was doing whatever it was he was doing, so that left him in one place with the Mao descendant's full attention. Murderous intent started to emanate from his body as he imagined such magnificently cruel ways to make the whiskered blonde pay for his crimes. How should I make you? Dragon shot. Shalba felt a powerful burst of energy coming his way and quickly dodged to the side. A massive pillar of green energy nearly roasted him, but he ducked aside and let the blast travel high up into the sky. He turned around with a sneer and spotted Issei aiming up from the ground, his armor still together and coated in a green light from Asia's healing. The pawn clenched his fist. Don't think you only got one axe to grind, you giant dick weasel. I'm here too, and I'm gonna make you sing like a puppet when I shove the entirety of my arm up your ass. You insolent Shalba. The deranged devil was nearly foaming at the mouth when he heard Rias yell his name with such disrespect. The Gremory heiress chambered her hands at her sides and channeled her destruction. We have indulged your lunacy for too long. You've overstayed your welcome, Gremory, you and all your filthy slaves. Shalba started attacking again, and the orc re-engaged him in battle. Their fight distracted the powerful devil from Naruto and what he was doing. The blonde watching his friends fight with a look of worry before he yelled, "Hey, don't let him get between you." Kaneko flipped away from one of his stray attacks. Senpai, shut up and work. Don't worry about us. We can fight, Xenovia yelled, swinging Durandal around and unleashing massive waves of holy aura at Shalba. Whatever you have to do, do it now, Kurama. Naruto yelled over the explosions from the battle. Is whatever this is working? I think. I'm almost. Come on. Come back. Come back. Oh you t t t t t t t t t t t t H Y H H H H H H H H H H H H Gawa ah. A powerful shockwave exploded out from where Naruto pressed his hand into Isobu's head. It sent him flying off the turtle's head and into the air before he quickly balanced himself with his wings. The blonde slowly lowered himself down, taking deep breaths and clutching his right hand after the blowback. The others stopped fighting for a moment and looked his way after the sudden pop garnered their attention. The giant beast aimlessly stared ahead and seemed dazed by what Naruto had just done. The turtle blinked its one giant eye after a moment. And then steadily he blinked more and more. Finally the turtle looked around, confused and bewildered, but actual light returning to its eyes. Isobu? Naruto spoke up. Is that you, Naruto? Kurama? The turtle's booming voice echoed out from its massive mouth. The three-tailed beast looked around, disoriented by the new location he found himself in. How did we get here? Naruto's breath hitched and a big smile stretched over his face. You're back. About fucking time. You really had us worried there for a sec. I did? The Biju tilted its head while looking at the blonde. I'm so confused. The last thing I remember was Madara absorbing me and the others into himself. Then I thought we were escaping, but then it all went black. After that I can't remember. First it was nothing, and then it felt like a fog, and now I'm here. Isobu looked around once more, and I really have no idea where here is. Yeah, Naruto chuckled as he caught his breath. It's been a while since we last saw you. Where is everyone? Where are the others? What? Gahhhhhhhhh. Isobu. Naruto yelled as the formations reappeared over Isobu's body and caused him to recoil in pain. The giant turtle buckled over and writhed with agony before Naruto looked over and spotted Shalba reaching out with his hand. "You filthy beast!" he yelled with a crazed look in his eyes, fed up with all the insubordination and resistance he had received when today should have been the precursor to his ascension to Mao. He gripped his fist and caused the turtle to twitch in pain. "I am your master. I am your king. Your only purpose for existing is to ensure that I succeed, and your purpose is yet to be fulfilled." Isobu rolled his head back and opened his gigantic mouth, starting to gather up a ball of black energy that steadily grew in power and intensity. Yes, that's it. That is the power I need," he yelled, cackling like a madman in glee as he watched his summoned monster obey his command. He laughed, "Ha ha ha. Soon I will take back the name Beelzebub and reclaim my rightful place as ruler of devils everywhere. I will cleanse this world of every insubordinate traitor that dared question my rule." He turned back on his foes below him and mocked, "And the first ones to experience my wrath shall be." It was only then that Shalba realized that Rias Gremory and her peerage were no longer trying to engage him in battle. He looked up and finally noticed that all the devils he had been fighting had regrouped with their whiskered companion by the turtle's head. Said turtle finally finished gathering the power for its attack, and took aim. Turning around and glaring at Shalba with an eye of pure disdain. "Oh!" Shalba raised a barrier in front of him and tried to create a teleportation circle to escape. "Gah!" The black ball fired out of the turtle's mouth and immediately came upon the Mao imitator. It overwhelmed him completely and dragged him far away from the mountain they stood on and out a great distance away. The devils, Norse god, and Biju all watched in silence as the black chakra ball flew away and exploded in a massive, violent outburst that carried out in every direction around it. A powerful wave of air wafted over them for a few moments before the explosion ceased and left a massive crater in its wake. "Right?" Isobu questioned while looking down at the others. "That was right? Because I don't think I like that guy." "Fucking Godzilla." Devil, Croisery roared and weaved a plethora of spells that would have annihilated any normal devil and would even leave an ultimate-class devil in a dire state. Azazel whipped his golden spear around and countered the multiple attacks that tried to destroy him. When he finished rendering the Asmodeus devil's attacks worthless, he sped forward at blistering speeds and charged his foe. The devil and fallen angel continued to dodge and counter each other as the sky around them was filled with attacks that could annihilate weaker foes. They quickly separated and made some distance between each other. The old Satan faction leader was heavy of breathing and trying to hide how exhausted he was, while the governor-general of the fallen angels looked as healthy as ever. Azazel spun his spear between his fingers. "That's it? The last one of you I fought at least was able to rip my arm off. You true devils are actually pretty disappointing when faced up close." "How?" Croisery gasped. "How are you still holding me back?" "The thing about sitting around being a sour little shit and crying about wanting your ancestor's seat is that it leaves you a little plump and out of shape." Azazel mocked, snickering as Croisery bristled with anger. "Maybe instead of barking orders to tell your so-called followers to fight for you, you should have learned a little something yourself. Professional opinion, if you feel like taking it." Gasping for air and realizing that things weren't looking good, Croisery looked over towards the two-tailed beast. The giant cat was hissing and swiping at Circex, the angel, and the Valkyrie that were distracting it. When it swiped with its claws, it cleared through and destroyed parts of the building around it. It snarled and blew fire up in irritation at the people buzzing around its head. Each time they had a chance, Irina would pelt it with weapons of light while Rosweiss would attack with multiple types of magic. "Looks like your trump card isn't working out that well," Azazel noted as the devil across from him clicked his tongue in annoyance. The fallen angel lazily swung his arm. "Is this the part where you swear vengeance upon us, bringing about a greater wrath another day that shall make us rue ever turning our backs upon the rightful ruler of the underworld? Is that it? Tell me if I'm getting close." Croisery's breathing started becoming shorter and harsher, barely containing his rage at his failure to overwhelm his opponents. With a scowl he raised his arm out toward the far end of the city. Magic circles marked his arm, and the blue cat quickly reacted by turning in the direction he'd pointed and yelling. What is this? What is it doing? Irina yelled as the giant cat started to gather up a massive power between its jaws. It's attacking, Roswise called out, striking the beast with a bolt of lightning but unable to stop its buildup. If I can't take back this world, then I'll leave it in smoke and ash, Croisery yelled in a mad rage. Destroy it, raze it to the ground. Asmodeus, stop. Sirzex called out to the other devil as he watched the strange creature build power for its attack. The crimson-haired Mao persisted, if you endanger the lives of the rest of our citizens just for your title. It is my right, and damn the fools that turned their back to me and my kin. If they wish not to follow me, then they can follow the lot of you into oblivion, now. GGGGGGWWAHHHHHHHH. The cat's body turned and fired its intense attack towards the city. It flew forward and disappeared. The others looked on in shock. No explosion. No detonation. No boom. Nothing. Just a pure black figure that appeared in its path and was still standing after making the ball disappear. Roswise and Irina gulped in fright as they slowly backed away. The two-tailed cat hissed and screeched at the figure as it slowly approached. The cat reeled back and prepared to release another wave of fire, but the figure of red and black raised its hand and pointed down. A hole appeared in the cat's leg that went through its entire limb. The giant feline toppled over and crashed into the side of a building as its front leg was grievously wounded. It looked up at the figure of pure destruction and prepared to attack again. Azazel barreled into its cheek and slammed the cat's head into the building hard enough to crack it. It was enough to render the cat unconscious in the street. Kraziri's mind blanked in horror as he realized his secret weapon was beaten and immobilized. He slowly looked up and found himself face to face with the pure destructive force in physical form. He grit his teeth and growled. His fists tightened at his side before he yelled. Why-oh! The figure waved its hand and Croisery's entire upper body was destroyed in an instant. A pair of torsoless legs fell down into the street below as the Mao descendant was wiped out. The figure of black and red power slowly lowered itself to the city street below. Once there, the aura of destruction slowly peeled away and revealed the crimson-haired devil at its center. Sirzex looked over at what was left of Croisery, Asmodeus and all the destruction caused by their infighting. He turned around and looked up at the unconscious two-tailed feline they had defeated. The Mao was not sure where this creature came from, or how it was Ophis and the Chaos Brigade got their hands on it. But it was their tool. A powerful weapon and something that could give great power to those that wished for it at the cost of themselves. If it was a danger to the underworld and the people he was sworn to protect. He slowly raised his hand and aimed his destruction at the giant cat. Devil, is it done? Are you done yet? Will whatever that pain was stop now? Be quiet, ya big baby. Odin groused and shut the giant turtle up as he tried to focus. He waved his staff around a little more before slamming it down by his feet. The magic circles that covered Isobu's body to make him subservient and ready to teleport appeared over his form before fading away. The old deity sighed and leaned back to stretch his back. And done. It's a little concerning just how complex and intricate those circles were, and it doesn't bode well that the Chaos Brigade has this kind of talent on their side. But you're clear. They can't summon you remotely and they won't be able to hurt you anymore. Thank you, old man. Isobu graciously thanked the elder. He looked at the blonde standing just beside the wizened old man. Naruto, who is this friend of yours? He's not really a friend. And this is, Naruto paused, looking the shriveled old pervert over once more before sighing as he realized it was the truth. This is one of the mightiest gods to ever live in this world. Odin cooled himself off. Geez kid. You already got me to dispel the magic circles. What else are you looking to get out of me? The whiskered blonde snarled with displeasure before Isobu spoke again. That man is a god? Huh. I've never actual met a god before. Well, Gramps was super powerful, but I don't know if he'd like being called a god. It's true. Ria said as she stepped up beside Naruto and spoke with the giant turtle. There are many different gods in the realm. As well as angels, devils, fallen angels, and many other species and races of beings we are in contact with. However, you are the first and only of your species we have ever met. She crossed her arms beneath her breasts. So you should probably expect quite a few looks and questions from a lot of people in the near future. So, it's just me? Just you? Naruto said as the turtle looked disheartened by the news. But he stepped up and quickly tried to cheer him up. But we don't know that for certain. If you made it, there's a chance the others did too. I mean, Kurama is still alive. He lives in a remote in my arm now, but he's still alive, that's something. You're cheering him up, but you're making me depressed in exchange. Kurama is conscious. In your arm? Isobu's eye closed. This is still so confusing. Yeah, and it won't get any simpler. Naruto turned around and ran his hand down his face. Now that the fighting was done, with the weight of everything that happened was finally settling in. They had defeated the leader of one of the factions of the Chaos Brigade, and rescued Asia from a life of torment under the sickest little piece of shit he had ever seen. Then he had discovered Isobu, reunited with the Biju he believed lost forever, and with Kurama's help pulled his consciousness back out from the depths and gave him back clarity. It was difficult to fully believe, but it was true. One of the Biju was still alive. Isobu had survived the blast that had brought him here. Which meant it was possible that others survived. Which could mean. He shook his head and tried to rid himself of those thoughts. It was too early to have his mind go out of control about what this could mean. He already considering all the possibilities in the months after he woke up in this world, and it left him drained. Until he knew the full scope of what was happening, he would hold off on making any wild theories. Are you okay? He pulled his hand away and saw Rias looking at him with honest concern. A little over to the side, he spotted the rest of the orc resting after their battles and recovering with a little help from Asia. They were exhausted by what they had been through, and honestly they deserved to rest after overcoming this ordeal. Hey everyone, Naruto spoke up and got their attention. He scratched the back of his head as he faced them. I just wanted to thank you for helping me get Isobu back. I know facing off against a giant angry turtle wasn't easy while also holding back a Mao. But you all helped me reach him and get him back. He shrugged his shoulders. I honestly never believed I would see one of them again. And not only did I find him, but you all helped me save him. So. Senpai, stop. Issei smiled as he looked up at his blonde friend. You don't need to thank us for helping. Yuto agreed. This was important, and meant a lot to you. So of course we were ready to help. You would have done the same, and have done it before. Kaneko piped up. A small smile growing at seeing the gratitude clear on his face for what she said. Plus this was quite an experience to see for ourselves. Xenovia added, helping a giant three-tailed turtle regain its senses in time to watch it attack a descendant of the original Mao with an attack akin to a ballistic weapon. I wouldn't pass that up for anything. So while it is entertaining to watch you fumble and show your little meek side, it is unnecessary. Akeno teased and enjoyed the indignant growl he gave. Oh, but if you want to continue, then we won't stop you. Everyone. Asia jumped up to her feet and ran up beside Naruto to face her friends. The blonde nun nervously bowed her head. Thank you so much for helping me. I know it was dangerous and difficult, but I really appreciate all of you. Asia senpai, we're just happy that you're okay. You're back with us, and that's all that matters. Didn't you hear what we just said to Naruto? Asia fretted and started to mumble out her apologies as tears of joy and relief filled her eyes. Naruto felt a small nudge to his side and looked over at Ria's smiling face. A group that took him into their own and fought to help him win back what he had to protect. Again, he couldn't believe just how lucky he was to have found these people after coming to this world. While the orc were recovering, the space around them started to shift and change. They looked around and prepared for battle. What is this? It's the barrier that was separating this place from the outside. Odin answered. It means that whatever was keeping it up has finally fallen. The Norse god chuckled as he tapped his staff against the ground a few times until it reverted into a cane. Safe to say that the Chaos Brigade's little assault has now been successfully thwarted. Good job, team. Let's do drinks. Naruto rolled his eyes and Rias sighed before she felt something against her hand. She noticed the circle with demonic emblems appearing over her palm before she held it out. When she did, a holographic image of her family's maid appeared. Graphia, I'm glad we can finally contact you again. The maid gracefully nodded in return. I'm glad to see you and your peerage are alright, Oju-sama. It took us some time, but we finally finished pushing back the remainder of the Chaos Brigade forces. You should be alright now. Yes, we just noticed. How is everything now that the old Satan faction has been pushed back? There is a lot of damage and a substantial amount of casualties. But compared to how it could have been, the numbers are much smaller than expected. I'm glad that you were able to stop it before things escalated too far. Rias looked back at Isobu before turning to the maid in her hand. Can you contact Onisama and tell him to get over here as soon as he can? There's something very important we need to talk to him about. I'm sorry, but that's not possible at the moment. Lucifer-sama and Azazel-sama were preoccupied with a heated battle against Croisery Asmodeus just a few moments ago. They finished him off, but he summoned a creature to fight for him that has caused quite a lot of damage to the city. He was able to incapacitate the two-tailed beast before killing Asmodeus, and now... Two-tailed? Naruto yelled as he came in front of Graphia's image. Was it a two-tailed cat with blue fur like fire? Was it big and spit flames? Indeed. Do you know this creature? Isobu, I'll be right back. I'll leave a clone here with you. Hentaigami, he turned to Odin. You have to send us back to the city, right now, please. Graphia, what happened to the cat Onisama fought? Actually, Devil, you can't tell me you aren't curious. Of course I'm curious. I'm also very aware of the damages it caused and the power it wields. And considering that is power that people like Asmodeus can abuse at their earliest convenience. But we can learn what it is. Azazel persisted as he and Sirzex stood to the side and stared at the giant cat being detained in a barrier by several devils. The fallen angel continued. Where it comes from? Where it got that power? How they came across it? These are questions we could answer if we take the time to study this thing ourselves. But I doubt the Chaos Brigade are just going to let a creature as useful as this just leave. Sirzex countered. If we keep it with us, we are painting a target on ourselves for them to come and raid to get it back. Azazel scoffed. Sirzex, we're already very, very deep on their shit list as it is. He chuckled and shrugged. You think us stealing their toy is going to make them hate us any worse than us trying to bridge an eternity of war and anger? They're going to kill us either way. Sirzex still didn't look convinced. Azazel shook his head. Look, I know you can only see the downside of keeping this thing here. But look at the possibilities. What if we could learn more about what it is the Chaos Brigade is doing with it? Maybe it isn't the only one? Isn't that something we need to find out? Maybe you should ask what Ajuka thinks about this? Sirzex frowned at the fallen angel. Don't do that. What? Don't act like you don't know exactly how Ajuka would react to this. He would be chomping at the bit to learn more about whatever this thing is. Azazel held up his hands in defense, nodding that he did know that and that was why he was trying to play that card. Sirzex stared at the blue feline as Irina and Rosweiss observed the strange creature themselves. He watched in silence as it remained unconscious. We would have to figure out a place to store it. We could alternate and a yellow blur sped past them and charged the captive blue feline. Naruto created a harmless ball of wind in his hand before lobbing it up at one of the people keeping the creature contained. It exploded by their foot, not harming them but catching them off guard long enough for them to falter. When they did, the barrier started to fail and fall. And once it was clear, Naruto leapt up and aimed directly for the cat's head. Naruto-kun, wait, Onisama, hold on, Rias and the others called out before Sirzex or Azazel could stop him. They watched as Naruto pawned a part of the giant cat's head and then remained still after he did. Kurama? I know what I'm looking for now. Give me a sec. After a minute, Naruto leapt off the blue cat's head and stumbled when he landed in the street. He picked himself up and quickly jogged over to stand in front of the beast's eye while it stirred on the ground. After a few tense moments, the cat's mismatched eyes slowly peeled open. Naruto filled its eyesight completely as he waited with bated breath. Naruto. The cat's feminine voice spoke out. He let out a breath of relief and smiled. Matabi. The two-tailed cat was disoriented and confused by where she was. She recognized Naruto, but the numerous people around her and the unfamiliar environment were unsettling. Matabi looked around groggily. What happened? How did I get here? All in due time. Just let us. Is that Kurama? Where is he? The cat pressed as she started to act more uncertain and frightened. She shuffled over her place on the ground. Why am I in pain? Why does it hurt? I don't understand. I don't. Matabi tried to stand up but quickly toppled over when her leg shot with pain. The cat panted and then looked down at one of her front legs to see a gaping hole straight through the limb. Naruto and the others looked at it in shock as Matabi gasped. What is this? Naruto turned on Searsex and Azazel. How did that happen? What did that? I did. Searsex answered. I was the one who attacked your friend. Why? Naruto yelled as he came up to Searsex and nearly yelled in his face. She couldn't control herself. She was in the hands of one of those devil fuckers, wasn't she? Why did she? Naruto. Ria's calm voice and hand on his arm pulled him back before he could rage at her brother any longer. He still looked irritated, but when he noticed her gaze lingering somewhere else he followed it and saw what she saw. The streets were warped and melted from heat and some of the buildings were either wrecked or toppled over completely. There were signs of damage and blood and all kinds of horror on this block alone. I think we need to have a quick discussion about what we do now. Azazel proposed, Searsex solemnly nodding in agreement as Naruto could only stare out at what had happened after he had left. We have a lot to talk about. Devil, there we go, almost done. You should be feeling better soon. Are you still experiencing any pain? Matabi was silent and had her eyes closed as Asia used her sacred gear to heal her injuries. Every few seconds the giant cat would open one eye and looked at how the injury on her leg was healing before ignoring everything else again. Despite Matabi's monstrous size, the others couldn't help but realize just how much of a cat the two-tailed beast was. This is crazy, right? Issei asked the others as they sat around outside with Matabi while waiting for a decision to be made. All the while the brown-haired pervert couldn't take his eyes off the giant cat they had suddenly found themselves watching over. I mean, I know we've dealt with a lot of crazy stuff before, but I never thought I'd meet a giant two-tailed cat. The biggest cat I thought I'd ever meet was Kaneko-chan. No offense, Kaneko-chan. The white-haired girl pouted as Akano nodded. It is a bit shocking. And to think that they are all related to the fox beast inside of Naruto-san as well. How do you think it fits in there? Xenovia wondered. She looked around and saw all the weird looks she was getting before she elaborated. I mean, you have to be interested, right? If the beast inside him is as big as this cat, how does he fit it inside? Did he eat it? Is his stomach bigger on the inside than the outside? Like that British doctor? Yuto sighed. Xenovia, these are the least pressing questions you could be asking right now. The blue-haired swordswoman looked frustrated before everyone saw Asia coming to rejoin them. Asia-san, how was it? I'm finished. Her injuries are healed and she should be fine now. The bishop explained before looking back at Matabi. She seems very angry. She didn't say anything to me and doesn't look happy to have us around. I don't think she likes us very much. Well, if what Senpai said was true, all she knows is that she was freed from captivity, died in an explosion, brought back to life without her consciousness, used by our enemies to fight, and beaten before given back her ability to think. Issei said with a grimace. I feel like that would leave just about anybody sour. I mean, remember how tough it was to get through to Senpai when he joined us? It was like bleeding a stone. Those that remembered Naruto's rocky start with the group nodded in agreement. Except Kaneko, who shrugged her shoulders. I don't remember it being that difficult. Issei relented. Well, you're adorable and nobody can be mad at you, Kaneko-chan. But for the rest of us it was like passing a kidney stone. I imagine this is gonna be pretty similar to that situation. Kaneko tuned out the rest of their conversation as she looked back at the giant cat behind them. It still had its eyes closed and looked like it was either trying to think or sleep. The white-haired Rook broke off from the group for a moment and made her way over to the Biju. Her sudden action caused the others to pause and watch in silence as she made her way over. Hello. Matabi opened one eye and looked down at Kaneko standing in front of her. She closed her eye again. Go away. Your name is Matabi-san, correct? I'm Kaneko Taju. It's very nice to meet you. The young freshman greeted respectfully before standing back up. I'm a friend of Naruto-senpai's, and I would very much like to get to know you. Leave me alone. Are you upset? If you are, you can talk to me about it. Matabi slammed her paws on the street and flared at Kaneko with her green and yellow eyes. The giant Biju snarled at the small girl. I've been unconscious or even dead for nearly 2 years. I was dragged to a new and unfamiliar world I don't know. I was controlled and experimented on by another group that were only interested in my power. I've apparently been stripped of meat and body parts so that other people can gain my strength. And after finally regaining my mind, I find my body beaten and missing chunks of it. I am sick of being treated like this by you humans. We're not actually humans. We're devils. I mean, we used to be human but not anymore, Issei said from a few meters back before shuffling awkwardly. Although the people that did all of that stuff to you were also devils. Then nothing has changed, Matabi yelled as she curled up in her spot. I'm alone, most of my siblings are gone, and my future is uncertain. You're not alone. Kaneko spoke up. You have Naruto-senpai, and Kurama-san, and Isobu-san. And us too. The Biju didn't look convinced. Also, not all of us were human before we became devils. And what does that matter? Kaneko closed her eyes, concentrated, and then opened them once her ears popped up on her head and her tail slipped out from her skirt. It took a moment for the changes to register with Matabi. Once she realized what had changed, her expression softened into a look of confusion. The cat lifted its head. What are you? A nekomata. A nekosho to be precise. I'm a cat yukai. I'm kind of like you. She pointed to her tail before pointing up at the two now softly swaying behind Matabi's back. Although I doubt I will grow to your size when I grow up. I've met other cats back in my world, but none of them were like you. Matabi lowered her head to look at Kaneko more closely. Are there others like you? Not many. Kaneko hesitated, but there are a few. Along with many of different beasts and creatures. We have a great variety of them in our world. And from what Naruto-senpai has told me, there are more of them here than back in your world. So you don't have to think you'll be all alone. Matabi looked unsure, but I still don't know if the people here. There are people here that want your power. We took you back from exactly the kind of people that are like that. Kaneko said, but Naruto-senpai wants to keep you safe, which means we do too. The other orc members stepped up by her side to greet the Biju, so please trust us. Matabi didn't say anything and still looked hesitant, however she didn't ignore them and her expression wasn't as reserved as it had been. She lowered her head to face Kaneko. Very well, kitten, I shall trust you. Thank you. Kaneko nodded. I promise Naruto-senpai will do whatever he can to help you. Until then, can you tell us a little about the world you came from? How did you meet senpai? Matabi thought for a moment. I don't really know much about Naruto. He's Kurama's Jinchuriki, and that was about it. We were in a huge battle when we all met him, but Kurama said we could trust him. And all of us and our people decided to believe in him. Matabi's thoughts lingered on her former vessel who was gone now forever. She continued, he might have been one of the few people who ever wanted to help us. Devil, so these beings are from your world, are they? And they're the same as the fox inside of you? Damn. I didn't realize the scope these things had until I saw them myself. Yeah, but I don't know where the Chaos Brigade is keeping them. Naruto was standing in a room with Rias, Azazel, Circex, Odin, and Roswise keeping his side. The blonde was frustrated, and that means we can't get them back. One thing at a time, brat. Odin said from his spot, we need you to explain a little more about these things. Roswise fretted but spoke up. When we were protecting the city, a number of Chaos Brigade members devoured this chunk of meat in their hands to temporarily gain power. They said that came from your friends. Is that true? People have been trying to find ways to utilize our power for generations. Some tried to summon us through sacrifice. Some tried to coerce us into joining their side. Why did they do that? Because we weren't on their side, and they needed our power. Also, they were preparing against the chance that we might attack them. Would you have attacked them? If they came to us looking for trouble or a fight, then we responded in kind. Otherwise, we wanted nothing to do with their world. When we were created, we were relegated to places that would act as our temples and let us live in silence. But over time the humans started to reach out and try to covet our abilities or slay us for numerous reasons. My siblings and I gained a terrible reputation back in our world, but it started because we had to protect ourselves. In the end, our fighting could only last so long, and the humans found a way to control us, by sealing us inside chosen individuals. When a village had captured a Biju, they would select a person from within their community to house the beast inside them. Sometimes they were chosen from a lengthy testing process. Naruto placed a hand on his stomach, and sometimes we were chosen as the best option at the time. But if you were chosen, then you became a Jinchuriki that could tap into their power. What happened to those people that ate that meat was probably them trying to take our power. Gaining access to power by eating our flesh has happened to me before. Although since the people that did it weren't compatible and did it for too long, you saw the results. That's interesting. Azazel hummed before leaning back against a broken window. So we know what they are, and we know how they were used to get power. So now all that's left is figuring out what to do next. You can't hurt them. That was a response in battle to make it stop. If they are your friends, then we won't hurt them. Sirzek promised. But we have to figure out what to do with them. Can't we keep them here? No, Sirzek responded firmly. He saw Naruto's anger flare but persisted. Naruto-kun, after the fight we just went through, we can't harbor the creature that caused most of that damage, voluntary or otherwise. I'm not sure how willing the citizens would be to housing them here, especially with the possibility that it would incur another retaliation from the Chaos Brigade. I have to think about the well-being of the people I was sworn to protect. The blonde frowned and scowled for a moment before letting out a sharp breath. He looked around at the others before nodding. I get that, honestly I do. I know how hard it is to just accept them when they present such an unknown and dangerous threat. But the devils have you, and the other Mao, and even other devils to rely on. But they only have me. I'm the only person in this world that will speak out and try to help them. They were here all this time and I didn't do anything to help. So now I have to help them. I need to do whatever I can. Then how about we offer space for Matabi in the Gremory territory for the time being? All eyes turned to Rias as she walked up beside Naruto. He's my responsibility, and if they are his, then by proxy they are the Gremory families as well. We have quite a lot of space in our land, so I'm sure there's a chunk of it we can cut out just for her to be left alone. All eyes turned to Sirzek as he stared at his little sister in silence. He puffed out his cheeks before blowing out the air. You know Oto-sama is going to have some words to say about that. Maybe, but I imagine ingratiating ourselves with a powerful new being that could be our ally is certainly a great trade-off for offering some space, don't you think? Azazel whistled and Odin chuckled, admiring the delegation from the young heiress to her Mao brother. Sirzek rolled his eyes. You'll have to bring this up with them. I'm going to have my hands full just convincing the other Mao this is a good idea. And what about Isobu? For that part one have to say no, Sirzek said apologetically. Having one Biju in our territory paints a target on us, but two in the same place is just asking for trouble. If we want to keep your other friend with us, I insist we do it somewhere else. Rias titled her head in thought. What about the Sea Tree territory? If I ask Sona and you ask Serafal-sama, I'm sure we could convince them. Or the Bael land. Cyroorg would probably accommodate, but he isn't the one to worry about from that family. The siblings both realized that was probably not the best choice, if I coerce Ajuka. Or I can take him back north. Just a thought. This time everyone turned to Odin as Rosweiss panicked. Odin-sama, you're actually offering to help? Why now of all times? First thing I found interesting in a long time. Feel like getting right into it. The Valkyrie looked more stunned than anyone. And she quickly started to rack her brain with the logistics. But if this turtle is as big as the cat, then where would we put it? I doubt anyone in Asgard will be very happy with a three-tailed gargantuan reptile in their land. Maybe the Golden Towers would be able to take him? Or how about, and just think about this for a sec, the ocean, you know, because he's a fucking turtle. The silver-haired beauty blushed. But won't Midgard-Sormer-san get annoyed that there is another being encroaching on his space? If that giant overgrown garden snake has a problem, he can come bring it up with me. If he can actually wake himself up for a moment. So I think we're set. Odin tapped his cane. Don't worry, brat, I'll keep your turtle safe. Naruto grinned and nodded before grabbing Ria's shoulder. He leaned into her ear. I am terrified of the idea that he's going to watch over Isobu. At the moment, I think we need to bear with it and be grateful. Devil, and honestly I feel different in this world. I feel like something is off with my body and I'm not sure how to explain it. This is a different world than the one you were used to, Irina said while she and the orc sat around the giant feline's head and conversed with her. Maybe your body is acclimating to some of the changes between your world and ours. I think Senpei had something like that too when he was finally getting his abilities back. Maybe, it's not just my energy that feels different but my body as well. I wish I knew how I was revived this time. This time, yes. You see, a Biju can be killed but we won't stay dead. We'll disappeared for a number of years before reviving. Sort of like a long dreamless sleep before waking up again. Damn, all that power and functionally immortal. The bad guys are going to be real upset they lost you. The conversation ended as the group of leaders re-emerged after their conference. The young students lifted themselves up and Matabi looked apprehensive as she awaited their decision. The man that put a hole in her leg stepped forward. For the time being, Rias has offered to give you a plot of land in the Gremory territory until we can figure out a more permanent solution. We can have guards watching your area at all times and you shouldn't have to worry about being bothered. As for your sibling, he shall be heading north with Odin-sama to a different location for safety. He's already on his way there to get him transferred. The orc looked relieved by the news and looked up at the Biju for her reaction. But Matabi looked unsettled and nervous. Hey, Naruto stepped up and looked at the two-tailed cat. I promise you this will be good. We won't let those bastards get their hands on either of you ever again. You can trust them. Matabi-san, Kaneko stepped up closer and stood directly in front of her fellow cat. If you get lonely, I don't mind coming to visit. I lived in the Gremory territory for a bit when I was younger, and I'd be happy to show you around if you want. Matabi's body physically relaxed at the idea. You would really come to visit? Of course. Kaneko held out her hand. We're friends now. The giant blue beast looked truly touched by her words and raised its claw. She lowered it so that one of her nails connected with a small, rook's palm. I appreciate that very much, kitten. Everyone smiled in relief that their comrade was able to befriend the worried beast. They held on to each other for a few more seconds. Before Kaneko abruptly burst into blue flames. Iyahhhhh. No. No. Panic shot through Naruto's body as he dashed forward while everyone else looked on in terror. The blue flames completely engulfed her body and figure as she was burned alive. Matabi, what did you do? Kaneko? Kaneko, no. What is it, senpai? Her calm and unchanged voice asked through the flickering flames before they completely vanished. All the people watching looked on in awe as the blue flames died and revealed not a single mark on Kaneko's body. Naruto dropped to one knee to better look her over. Her skin was fine, her clothes were unmarked. She looked perfectly okay. Until he got to her eyes. What? One was yellow, and the other was green. Kaneko was confused by his expression and looked back at the others for their help instead. When she did, she noticed their shocked expressions as well. But instead of her face, they were looking lower at her arms. She looked down as well. In time to see the blue flames dancing up her arms without leaving a single burn on her. Matabi, Naruto looked up at the stunned Biju. Did you do this? I am not sure. I felt something weird and tried to do something about it, and when I did, kitten was covered in flames. And after that happened, I can feel her. Feel her? What do you mean you feel her? I can feel something too. Kaneko noted, staring down at the flames in her hands before looking up at the Biju. I think I can finally feel something else. Something from Matabi-san. Okay, what the fuck is going on? Issei summed up what everyone was thinking. Everyone except Azazel, who was rubbing his chin and stepping in closer. He looked at Kaneko closely and examined her before looking up at Matabi. He looked between them a few times before speaking. You think them eating a piece of meat from the Biju was their backup plan? Everyone looked confused by the fallen angel's words before Sirzex asked, What do you mean, Azazel? The fallen angel elaborated, I mean, I doubt the eating meat thing and then possibly dying a cruel and unusual death was their first idea to gain power. If I were them, I'd probably try to harness this power some other way. Hey Matabi, you said you felt something weird a second ago, right? What did you mean? I meant that I feel a bit different now. I don't really know how to explain it. I think something was changed when I was revived. Maybe when they gave the tailed beasts their forms back, they altered a few things around. Azazel wondered, they probably altered your bodies to try and easily siphon off your energies, but even when they tried it might not have worked, so they resorted to a risky method of taking something from you physically, your flesh in this case. And the reason they couldn't take your energy themselves was because you didn't give it willingly. I mean, this is an intense level of power they were playing with. It was dangerous to just go around and play with it without proper guidance. You mean if the Biju get their consciousness back, then can give their power to others? That's what the Chaos Brigade did when they revived the Biju? I mean, we kinda just saw it happen. Azazel pointed to the young Rook, who had finally quelled the flames dancing over her arms. And if sealing them inside the bodies of others to harness their energy was how the original Jinchuriki were made, Then maybe receiving that energy from the Biju instead is how another Jinchuriki can be made. He shrugged. If that's the case, then Kaneko here is the first example of a new Jinchuriki. A Neo Jinchuriki. Oh, I'm trademarking that. Naruto marveled at the idea that the Biju could pass their power onto people themselves now instead of being sealed into others. He stared at Kaneko, who looked over herself for a moment before the faint blue flames disappeared and her eyes returned to normal. She summoned them again and her eyes changed once more as she could call upon that power at will. He was reminded of when he had supplied the Shinobi Alliance members with a layer of Kurama's chakra during the heat of battle. It must have been similar to that, except instead of him acting as the medium between the Biju and people, the Biju could directly do it to others now too. Kurama, worth a try. Matabi, Naruto stepped up and stretched out his hand. Can you try it with me too, please? Matabi offered her paws and Naruto took her nail in his hand. His vision was quickly filled with blue flames and a swell of power in his body. Whoa! The others marveled. Issei smiled. Okay, that is pretty fucking cool. It works. Naruto smiled and flared the flames hovering over his hands. He looked over himself and the blue flames that wreathed him before they quickly vanished away. The blonde looked up at the Biju. What happened? I don't know. I could give you my power for a second, but there wasn't the same connection as when I made it with Kitten. It was temporary, but I could still feel Kurama inside dispelling what I was doing. Naruto looked down at his arm. You doing that on purpose? Hell no, damn. Thought I could get some of my power back. It would only boost you for a little bit. Wherever my power has gone has made it impossible for you to attain the strength we had before coming here. But what Matabi has done has shown there might be a way to fix it. Give me back some of my old power, if we ever want to go back to full power. I need to find your body and wake you up, devil. Here we are. Big ocean. Plenty of room for you to do tons of stuff. Swim. Sleep. Whatever it is giant turtles do with their free time. Odin said as he looked out over the crashing waves on the shores of one of the lands in the north. He then looked up at the giant beast he had offered asylum to and stared unamused at it. Hey? The turtle's eye was closed and completely ignoring Odin. Hey, that stirred Isobu awake before looking down at Odin. Sorry, I was talking to someone. Thank you for bringing me to your ocean. I can't remember the last time I could just rest in water without being bothered. Yeah, good for you. Odin said sarcastically, I'm doing this out of the goodness of my own decrepit heart and all I get is a thank you. Do you want something more? Isobu asked. I just learned that there's something more I could do, but I'm not totally sure if it will work. Odin raised his eyebrow in curiosity. Apparently I can give other people some of my power and make them connected to me. If you want a thank you for helping me I could do that, but... Isobu stared at the tiny god in front of him and hesitated. Honestly, being around you is frightening enough. I don't know if I can take us being connected. The giant, overwhelming, bomb-barfing turtle monster from another world is afraid of me? The bearded man smirked. Damn, don't I feel like a catch today? Odin-sama. Roswise touched down beside her master and frowned. You can't keep dawdling out here with the Biju. Everyone in Asgard is going to want an answer as to why you invited this creature to our domain and... Hey, how about her? Do it to her, huh? Roswise looked up in time for the tip of Isobu's hand to touch her forehead. She was immediately enveloped by water that completely overwhelmed her before it disappeared. Ah-h-h-h-h-h. The Valkyrie screamed. One of her eyes now covered by her silver bangs as the other eye was crimson with a yellow pupil. What happened? What was that? What is this? I don't. Geysers of water started to violently shoot out the palm of her hands at extreme velocity before she started waving them around. Why is this happening? Oh, this'll be entertaining. Thanks, you can go now. See y'all later. Am I gonna die? Is this going to kill me? Stop panicking, Roswise. Odin called out as his personal bodyguard ran around like crazy and sprayed water everywhere. I don't know why you're freaking out so much. This should only be making you slightly wetter than usual. And just think about all the men's thirst you'll be able to quench now. Their actual thirst, not their sexual one. Wah! Odin-sama. This is not the time. The old god chuckled at the volume of water shooting out with her tears. Oh, this was definitely the right choice. Devil, what are you thinking about? Naruto came out of his thoughts and looked up at Rias as she came over by his side. He had been standing in the street looking at the spot Matabi had been sitting in before she had been guided away to her new living area. I'm just hoping she'll be okay. She has us to look after her now. We won't treat her like the Chaos Brigade did. I know you won't, Naruto said softly, it's just that. This is an honest-to-God new start for them. There isn't 1,000 years of awful stories or myths and legends to drag their names through the mud. There aren't any villages that need to capture them for military power. They can finally have a life where they can live in peace. But if the Chaos Brigade keeps doing what they're doing, they'll fuck up any chance of a peaceful life they could have. That's why we're here. Her hands slipped into his and their fingers intertwined. She smiled up at him hopefully. We'll find a way to get them all back, and give them peaceful lives from now on. We just have to keep going forward. Naruto smiled at the way she cleared his mind. His other hand settled on her cheek and drew her in for a quick kiss. Ah, isn't that sweet? The two quickly stopped as Azazel and the rest of the orc finally came back to get them. The fallen angel teased, "Oh please, don't stop on our account." Quiet. Rias looked at her. Queen, are Oto-sama and Okawa-sama free? Indeed, you should be able to speak to them about Matabi-san's relocation over at the estate. Good, then we better get going. Hey Kaneko-chan, Gasper walked alongside his best friend. Can you still summon that fire even now that Matabi-chan is gone? Kaneko quickly showed that she didn't need to be in the Biju's proximity to utilize her gift. I never got the chance to properly thank her for giving me this power. It must be so amazing to be a Neo-Jinchuriki. Don't use that term so lightly. You don't want it to go to Azazel-sensei's head. Senpai, Issei slowed down and walked beside Naruto as he grinned. I guess now that I have my balance breaker finally, I can start picking up some of the slack in our fights until you get your strength back. Although we don't exactly know how long that is gonna take. Yeah, Naruto snickered. I guess I can finally let you take most of the ass beatings while I stand off to the sideline and gawk about boobs. You totally will. Issei empathically agreed. You will totally get the greatness and beauty of breasts, senpai. How's it feel to be empowered by breasts, old man? I don't want to talk about it. Issei asked, but seriously, how long do you think it'll be before you find your old power again? Don't know. Naruto responded. First off I have to find out how many of the Biju did the Chaos Brigade get their hands on. 9 of them, is what this one found. The group of Angel, Fallen Angel, and Devils all went silent when they heard the new voice join their conversation. They all looked back to see a new person had joined them in their stroll to the Gremory territory. A little girl with black hair and clothes that would look more appropriate on a doll working as a stripper. The teens all looked confused by the strange girl's sudden appearance as they looked between each other. Issei stepped forward. Hey little girl, are you lost or? Don't touch it. Azazel's command startled the pervert and the rest of the group. They were especially surprised to see their joking and easygoing advisor looking so deathly pale and afraid. Partner. Slowly back away. Don't let it, Diedrich. The girl appeared by Issei's side and stared at his left arm in silence. No one dared move as the girl examined his arm carefully. You still haven't found your body, and are stuck inside the object, are you? Yes. Difficult to reclaim my body when it has been destroyed beyond repair. I see. Why are you here, Ophis? My snakes called to me. The little girl stood quietly as a pair of white snakes formed out of her arms and hissed at the orc. They fell back into place and melded with her flesh before she continued. The beasts we had, are now gone, and can't be brought back to us. You had? Naruto noticed her words and stepped forward. Are you part of the Chaos Brigade? I am the progenitor. Rias gulped. You made the Chaos Brigade. I offered the snakes. I offered the chance to fight. The little pointy-eared girl grabbed something out of her pocket. She pulled out the ragged headband with the warped and broken metal plate on front. I found the beasts in the dimensional gap. My headband. Naruto quickly stepped towards the girl and grabbed the headband in her hand. That's mine. I thought I lost it. He pulled on it but it wouldn't budge out of the little girl's hand. With a little more force Naruto pulled but it didn't even register with the gothic loli he was struggling with. He grabbed it with both hands and yanked so hard his feet nearly slipped. But still Ophis didn't relent. Finally Naruto opted for the extreme move. placing his feet on the tiny girl's chest and using his entire body to pry the headband from her tiny hands. Naruto finally had to let go and topple into the concrete once he realized it wasn't working. He started panting and wiped his cheek. Fucking hell, kid, what the fuck are you made of? Infinity. Chaos. Nothingness. Naruto rolled his eyes. Okay, whatever. He picked himself up and scowled at the little girl. Listen, Brad. I don't care who you are. You need to give me back the Biju right now, or I swear I will. Stop. Naruto looked down at his arm. Kurama? Naruto. You need to stop talking to this thing. But she has the others with her. She has you. We could get your body back. No, we can't. Not from this thing. Naruto looked back down at the little girl silently staring at them. Kurama, what is this thing? Sage mode. I can't say anything else. Naruto decided to comply and gathered natural energy into his body. Once it was done, his senses were magnified dozens of times over and he could feel everything. And with the little girl in front of him, he felt nothing. Nothing at all. Everything had a sense to it. Humans were baseline normal. Some with intense emotions had different feelings to them. And since arriving in this world, he could feel that all the different races registered in some way in his senses. Even the Jubi had felt like an immense, unimaginable monster bearing down on them. But with this girl there was nothing. He knew Issei and Rias and the others were right beside him, but he couldn't feel them. They were swallowed up by the nothingness. Everything was swallowed up by the nothingness. It was empty, and Naruto could say without any doubt that the nothingness continued on forever. He came reeling out of his senses and back to reality as he looked down at the little girl once more. He gulped in shock and tried to stand his ground. Before a hand settled on his shoulder, he was slowly pulled back from standing in front of the unquantifiable being by Azazel. The fallen angel whispered, "Don't try anything with that one. Whatever tricks or attacks or techniques you could imagine, don't work on it." The fallen angel stepped forward, still cautious about the being they were confronting but hiding behind his bluster to speak. "So Ophis, I gotta know. What's the goal here? Why go through all the trouble of collecting monsters from other worlds and joining forces with the bad element when you've never done anything else before?" "Great Red." She said the name as if it were supposed to mean something. "I am going to kill him." "Great Red?" The fallen angel chuckled. "Ophis, I don't think that thing can be killed. I shall try. To get my peace back. I will find a way," Ophis stated in her monotone before turning around and walking away. After a few steps she vanished completely from their sight. "Sensei," Issei gulped. "What was that?" "The leader of the Chaos Brigade. The strongest existence. The Ouroboros dragon." Azazel turned around, facing his startled students with sweat on his face. "That, kids, was the dragon god. The being that has existed since the beginning of time and the single strongest creature in our world. Although even that might be second place if Great Red is all he's cracked up to be. Basically, that was the single worst opponent we could have been faced with right now. The final boss that is petty much every optional boss ever rolled up into one. And that's the leader of the Chaos Brigade? Yep. The one we need to stop in order to stop them all? Yep. The one we need to get all the Biju back from safely? Yep. Fuck, almost every orc member said in unison. Devil, do you think I should wear something else? Yuto, Gasper, and Issei looked up from the screen they were playing on to stare at their older friend in silence. The boys of the Orc had gathered together on Saturday to play games in the media room of the Urashi Heights. They had been playing together for a few hours. More specifically, Gasper had been whooping their butts, before Naruto posed the question. He noticed their looks. "What? Senpai, did you seriously just ask that?" "Yeah, why?" "Naruto-san, of course you need to change into something else." Yuto clarified, "This is a date you're going on with Bucko. You shouldn't go there wearing just your school uniform or anything like that. Consider how much Bucko has been looking forward to this date. Do you expect her to show up in her usual uniform as well?" Well. Naruto was stumped. He raised a good point. When the sports festival was finally over, the first thing Rias did was come up to him and tell him they were going on a date. She said they did in a week's time, on Sunday, when they were free from their duties so they could have the day together. She seemed so happy and excited, and while it was easy to imagine her showing up in the same school uniform she usually wore, it didn't feel right. Damn. You have to go all out, senpai, Gasper said from his spot in his box. Bucko has really been looking forward to this. It's why she called Kaneko-chan and all the others to help her prepare. Is that what they're doing right now? Probably. Shit. The blonde, pawn, dropped back in his seat and ran a hand through his head exhaustedly. He looked towards the boys. Okay, so what do you usually wear on a date? Oh shit, I just asked the wrong people, didn't I? He quickly realized he was asking a despised pervert and a boy dressed as a girl with crippling social anxiety. His eyes quickly turned to his only remaining hope, Kiba. You're popular. What do you usually wear when you go out with girls? Yuto scratched his chin before laughing softly and giving a charming smile. Actually, I don't really go on dates. I do meet some of my older female clients after hours for anything they need help with. And what do you wear then? Yuto looked down at the school uniform he was currently wearing. Where the fuck do you shits come off criticizing me for my clothing choices? It's all good, senpai. Issei piped up, smugly cupping his chin as he lorded over his friends. I actually have been on a date, so I know how to dress. Issei, tissues and lubrication on your right hand isn't a date. Technically, I think it's a date with Rosie. That's not what I'm talking about, Issei yelled. I went on a date with Yuma-chan before it turned out she was Rainare. The psycho bitch who stabbed us doesn't count as an actual date. And I went on a date with Asia too. She wanted to celebrate us winning our foot race. We spent the day seeing the town, going through shops, stopping at an ice cream shop, and watching a movie before we walked back home. That actually sounds like a pretty nice day. Naruto begrudgingly admitted while Issei smiled proudly. And what did you wear when you went out? I wore some of my smarter clothes. Things that need to be cleaned and pressed and only worn on special occasions. Do you have anything like that, senpai? There was his school uniform. His ramen shop uniform. The clothes he wore on his days off. His pajamas. And the tracksuit he got after the raiding game with Riser. I have that suit I wore to that gala with all the leaders when we were in hell. Naruto said sadly. It's still ripped up and torn from the fight I had with Kaneko's bitch sister and that Dragon Ball wannabe. They didn't look convinced, and Naruto didn't feel much better either. His face fell into his hands and he let out a long defeated sigh as he realized he was screwed. Oh, young lover, you seem so disheartened and lost. But no worries, for I am here. No, fuck off. Azazel clammed out. Wow, that was fast. Didn't even give me time to pitch my answer to your problem. Yeah, but I'm getting a handle of what I should expect from you. Naruto turned from his spot on the couch and looked back at the fallen angel with dead eyes. You are probably going to get me swim shorts or a thong to wear on my date. Or some stupid hat that looks like a pair of genitals. Or maybe I'd be so pressed for something to wear that you'd sneak me a shirt which at first glance would be completely normal, but then at some point would reveal words that say, Vagina Exploration Team, or Fire Crotch Divers, or an arrow pointing down at my dick that says, for sale, barely used, or something stupid and demeaning like that. Yuto, Issei, and Gasper all turned and looked at Azazel for his rebuttal. The Governor General looked depressed. Shit, kid. You really know how to suck the wind out of my wings. I had a few quirky little ideas bubbling around in my head, but now I just feel drained. But some of those ones you just said are solid. Azazel made his way around the couch and joined the boys, snatching the controller out of Naruto's hand and restarting the game quick enough that the others had to quickly concentrate again. Fine, if I can't get away with a joke, then you can take some actual clothes for your date tomorrow. You have actual real clothes I can wear? Naruto questioned. That's suspicious. Well, then you can remain a paranoid little turd for the rest of your life while you go on a date with your girlfriend in your work clothes or your tattered tuxedo. Azazel retorted. By the way, what are the plans for tomorrow? Ria said she had the perfect day planned and to leave it all to her. Azazel gave a small but unsatisfied nod. What? Kid, have you noticed that you're letting Rias make all the moves here? The older man said to the young, inexperienced boy. I mean, she's the one that asks you on dates, prepares them, and probably some other stuff. You're just a passenger in your own relationship. With a moment to himself, Naruto thought back to all the defining moments of their time together. Rias had pushed for them to spend time together when they were still getting to know each other. She asked to come to his apartment the night she was reeling about her arranged marriage. She had kissed him. When they were getting more physical, it was her that initiated it. He was the one who asked her to go out with him. but she had been the one to set everything up to that point. Damn, Naruto muttered in guilt before looking to Azazel for genuine advice. But how am I supposed to know when to act? How do I know when I won't just be pushing her or forcing her to do something? Did she force you to do anything? Azazel shot back with a sly smirk. Just try with her first, and you might find just how far things can go. He saw Naruto consider what he said deeply before nodding sagely. He was glad to see he was finally getting around to succeeding in the wise mentor role he had been aiming for. Azazel looked back up at the screen and beat his foes handedly. Issei, don't forget we're going to the underworld tomorrow for that thing. Oh, right, sorry sensei, almost forgot. Thing? What thing? Just a little experiment we're trying out with Searzex and his people. You mean his peerage? No, that vague answer left Naruto and the others doubtful. Look, we'll be on the train there with you. But we promise not to bother you or your little girlfriend. You fucking... The blonde hissed, you start making good points and then you ruin it with shit like that. Nah, I'm a great mentor, devil. What do you think they're doing anyway? No idea, and I don't really want to think about them either right now. Fair enough. Naruto and Rias decided to forget about whatever it was Azazel had planned for Issei today and focused back on their date. The blonde, pawn, had finally found some clothes to wear from Azazel's wardrobe. Apparently he had a large assortment of clothes in all of their sizes just in case they ever needed to change. A niggling feeling in the back of his skull said he should be concerned why Azazel knew their sizes and measurements, but he knew he wasn't going to like the answer so he just ignored it. Instead he opted to take a collared shirt and jeans for his date, and remained blissfully ignorant of the probable invasion of privacy. He had to admit that the others were right about wearing some better clothes. Rias certainly didn't disappoint. The beautiful redhead had woken up early and gotten dressed so he wouldn't see her. They met up in the basement to board the train and he got a look at what she had prepared for the day. She had on a white blouse and cream cardigan, as well as a pleated skirt to match her outfit. She also wore the glasses she used when studying or thinking deeply on something to round out her attire. In all it made her look so much more mature than she already was and make him feel like he was underdressed. She also tightly held onto a big bag in her arms that she didn't let him look in. You know, Naruto started another conversation, looking over himself and pulling at his collar. I'm starting to think I should have went for something a little better than just this. Rias giggled softly, you look fine. I'm just glad you wore something other than your uniform. Seriously had to pay the boys back for that advice, I didn't even know you had clothes like that. Don't. He admitted, scratching the back of his head. Azazel let me borrow some clothes from this big surplus of clothing he has in the hotel. Rias looked perturbed by that knowledge. Besides I can't afford anything snazzy or good-looking even if I wanted. Rias stopped in place and looked at her boyfriend in shock and confusion. Naruto, you have plenty of money. What? You've seen my wallet. Naruto retorted, I mean I'm not paying the old man back anymore, but the amount I make at the ramen shop I usually put back into keeping the shop up. I barely spend anything on myself. Yes, but you have a large portion of shares in a growing food franchise that has been branching off into different ventures since we bought them a few weeks back. Naruto's eyes slowly widened in shock as Rias scoffed. Didn't you notice that when you checked your banking statement? Naruto, you know you have a banking app on your phone, right? I don't know half of the crap that's on this thing. And I still haven't figured out how to work everything on it yet. The blonde quickly pulled out his smartphone and started flicking through the dump of applications and settings on the screen. I mean there are games and lifestyle stuff and also videos and photos and all the crap Kaneko adds on here sometimes, and Irina pretty much attacked me the other day so she could tell me about some picture thing she heard in class that changes how you look. Give it here. Naruto quickly passed the device over to the redhead who quickly found the app and typed in the information. When she finished she turned it around and held it up for him to see. There you go. He took back his phone and looked at the screen. He blinked a few times to clear his eyes. He wiped his eyes. Your eyes are not broken. He wiped the screen. Phone's not broken either. That made him nearly stumble back in shock and use the wall to prop himself up. Rias chuckled, congratulations. You're set. Rias-sama. The two turned around and found Graphia standing just a few feet away. The beautiful maid bowed her head. I am honored to greet you and Naruto-sama today. I understand you have an evening planned together in the Gremory territory. Rias nodded back to the older woman. Hello Grafia, it's nice to see you again. Oni-sama isn't here to bother us, is he? Srizex-sama is currently on the premises, but he has an appointment with Azazel-sama and Issei-sama, so I doubt you will have much interference from him. Grafia nodded respectfully and then walked away. Once she was gone, Naruto leaned into Rias' ear. She's Seer's ex-wife and Milika's mom, right? Of course. So doesn't that make her a lady of the house, or a noble or princess or queen or something? Why is she a maid? Rias shook her head. We don't know and we don't really want to push. It has either become so ingrained in her mind that she does it out of habit, or she likes it. We just nod and let her be. Even the most serious and composed woman in this world was a little weird. Go figure. He shrugged. Okay, so what's the plan for today? Are we walking around your home? Flying? Actually, there's something I've wanted to do for a very long time, Rias said with excitement brimming in her voice. She turned the corner and led them down a long corridor. Saying hello and nodding to the servants, they passed along the way before reaching a large door. They walked inside and Rias smiled while Naruto whistled in surprise. It was a large garage filled with cars parked next to each other all the way down to the other side of the lot. Naruto came from a world without cars, and had only seen them over the time he had been in Kuo. He didn't know anything about them, but even he could tell that all of these cars were fast and expensive and something he was never going to be able to afford even with his recent influx of cash. Damn, did not think I would see anything like this in the underworld. Rias made her way over to a particularly swanky-looking red convertible. Naruto touched the door and looked inside before shaking his head. I can't drive though. So does one of the people working here drive or? Rias just looked at him with a wry smile. Seriously, you know how to drive? She nodded and Naruto chuckled. You never cease to amaze me. Thank you for the compliment. Here, hold this. They handed him the bag while she went to grab the keys. Don't look inside. It's a surprise. Better be a great surprise. I think you'll like it. Devil. The red car sped down the road of the Gremory territory so quickly it was almost a blur. The wind rolled over fiercely and caused red and yellow hair to flap rapidly. Rias relaxed into her drive as she found a great comfort in driving around and letting her worries fade away. She didn't get to drive much since she lived in the human world, but a few times she came down here so she could go for a ride and relax. The times she could convince her family not to saddle her with a professional driver were the opportunities she loved most. Naruto sat beside her and leaned back into the chair as he closed his eyes and felt the wind rush over him. He chuckled to himself when his hair billowed back so forcefully from the wind wafting over him. He had achieved speeds like this before, and even faster than a car, but there was a strange calm in moving this fast over such a flat path without having to actually move or worry about any dangers he had to avoid. He had never ridden in a car before, but he could certainly see the appeal of it. Do you want to listen to some music? Naruto lifted his head and looked over at Rias. Do you have radio stations down here? Of course we do, but I was thinking something a little more traditional. Rias' fingers danced over the dashboard screen and selected some music to play during their drive. A melody started playing during their drive as Rias grinned. Oh, I love this song. Odo-sama let me listen to it when I was a child and I just fell in love with it. I used to sing it when I was younger. You can sing? Oh yeah, I can play piano too because I always used to play it when I was a little girl. Giving a few quick notes that perfectly matched how the song played out, Rias proved just how gifted she was. Naruto clapped when she finished her showcase before she turned it back on him. And what about you? Can you sing? I'm not totally sure. I've never really tried. So give it a shot. I don't even know the song. That doesn't mean you can't vocalize. The two shared a quick laugh before Rias pleaded, please, give it a try for me? Naruto caved in and started to roughly try to match the voice from the radio. He closely matched the pitch and tempo, but when he tried to make the notes last he faltered and screwed up. While he sung, Rias couldn't stop her giggling fit, and seeing her laugh made Naruto slip up and laugh as well. After a few moments Naruto calmed down and caught his breath. So? Not bad. Rias said kindly, a bit rough around the edges but I'm sure you can make it work. Don't encourage him. I've heard dying animals with more grace than that. Shut up. Naruto groused to the creature in his sacred gear, and here I thought you were sleeping or something. I was, and your dying shrieks woke me up. Oh, don't be like that, Kurama. Rias spoke up so the fox could hear her. I think encouragement works better than just criticizing him. You are far too kind, Rias. Naruto frowned at his arm. You're not joining us on our date today, right? No, thankfully I have better things to do. You two enjoy your day, I'm going to go hang out with the others. Alright, have fun. Wait, what? Naruto looked back down and waited for a response, but Kurama didn't respond. He shook his hand and raised it to his ear. Kurama, did you hear what he said at the end? Huh? Rias looked his way before shaking her head. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. The car slowed down and stopped at the edge of the road. I was trying to concentrate because we're here at the first stop. The two removed their seatbelts and stepped out. When Naruto got out, he finally noticed the massive field that stretched out as far as the eye could see on his side of the car. Rias rounded the vehicle and stood beside him as they looked out over its majesty. What do you think? It's beautiful. It's so clean and untouched. He had lived in Kuo for nearly 2 years now, and had almost forgotten what an empty field with grass looked and smelled like. It reminded him of Konoha with just how vast it was. It goes on forever and reaches. The mountains? Are those mountains in your territory? How big is this place anyway? Roughly about the size of Honshu. She noticed his eyes nearly pop out of his head hearing that their land was the same size as Japan's main island. She simply shrugged her shoulders. We were very liberal with passing out batches of land when our society was being formed. You have to remember we don't have oceans, so there is a lot more land for us to use. There's so much that most of it is just empty space. Man, your world is so much crazier than I ever expect. I think I'm starting to understand everything, and then I see stuff like this. He motioned out to the vast, beautiful field in front of them. He stepped out into the grass, letting the soft wind rush over him with the gentle breeze. He closed his eyes and let his wings spread out from his back, feeling the wind run against them enough to almost lift them up. You've really gotten accustomed to things since we first met. Naruto looked over his shoulders and saw Rias softly touching one of his outstretched wings. You remember how obstinate you were when you first became a devil? I remember you being very stubborn and bullheaded about making me join you. Naruto retorted. I also remember you being the one to jump me at my apartment. Stop bringing that up. He chuckled and protected himself from her slaps of fury. Once she had finally ceased her outrage, Naruto stepped out further into the field. Hey, speaking of progress, I wanted to show you this. The whiskered devil held out his hands and concentrated his demonic power. An orb of fire appeared in his palm, floating there for a moment before he tossed it into his other hand. An orb of water formed next, as well as balls of wind, dirt, and electricity. He kept all 5 orbs rotating in place above his hands before sending them flying and exploding out above the field. Rias clapped proudly. You really have come far from where you started. You're getting better control each and every day. He made a show of bowing in appreciation for her words of encouragement. But the redhead then titled her head and looked befuddled. But I thought your demonic power was more potent than that. I could have sworn your attacks were larger and more powerful when I've seen you fight with them. Actually, you're right. Naruto quickly took a seat in the field and crossed his legs to meditate. After a few moments his body was filled with natural energy and he activated Sage Mode. He stood back beside Rias and held up his hand, creating another ball of fire that was considerably bigger and more volatile than the first one. Those times you saw me fight were when I was in Sage Mode. I noticed when I used them my attacks were more powerful than before. Huh, Rias examined the ball of fire in his hands that flickered and popped after every second. I think your demonic power is affected by the energy you collect when you're in Sage Mode. It boosts the energy in your body, which travels into the demonic power you create and makes it more powerful. Sage Mode can help me make my attacks more powerful? He and Rias looked at the ball of fire flickering wildly in his hands. Well, now that is great news. The fire in his hand exploded upwards in a volatile release, causing them both to shirk backwards. Hee, Rias softly chuckled at the fire growing uncontrollable in his hand. Maybe you should give it a little more practice first. She raised her hand and covered it in destruction before quelling the flame and destroying it. By the time she reached his hand, her power vanished and she intertwined her fingers with his before their hands fell to their sides. But I'm sure you'll get there sooner or later. Naruto let out a slight chuckle and expelled the natural energy in his body. deactivating his sage mode and making the orange coloring disappear from around his eyes. The two walked back to the car hand in hand. So do we have other stops on our little trip? We do. A few more actually. And I'm sorry to do this on a date, but I have some business we need to take care of first. Devil, it's Rias Himasama. We're being visited by Gremory-sama. Hello princess. Rias graciously bowed and waved to the village people that came to greet her. Naruto followed behind a few steps back and looked around in surprise at all the people coming out to see her so quickly. They greeted her like she was royalty or some kind of celebrity. Which in all fairness was actually pretty accurate now that he thought about it. Hello, Rias Ojo-sama. An elderly man, possibly the village elder, came out to the heiress with a faithful bow. Rias was quick to return the gesture of kindness with one of her own. We didn't expect you to come out here personally for the monthly record. Well, I was making my way around here and thought I should stop by and make sure everything is set with the villages along the way. Rias handed Naruto the bag she was carrying and then stepped up with the elder. Shall we see what we can prepare for the next month? Rias had told him what this was on the ride over. Apparently there were a number of villages and settlements living in the large territory owned by each noble family. The people who were living here were the descendants of the loyal vassals and retainers of the first devils to pledge loyalty to the pillar demons millennia ago. Now they weren't called into battle or servitude, but were still loyal to the families that sheltered them and lived on their lands, being farmers or workers or just having normal lives. Every month or couple of weeks the noble family in charge would send representatives to the villages in its territory to inquire about supplies or any conditions that could be improved. Rias thought that since they were going to pass a few villages along the way, that she should come and check up on her future people herself. Naruto found it strange that this was the oddest thing he had seen since coming to the underworld. In a world of giant monsters, impossible abilities, dangerous foes, and larger-than-life devils, there were just small villages like this that lived their daily lives. Not every devil was the child of an aristocrat or a noble whose bloodline stretches back to the very beginning of life. Some devils were just people, and they had lives far removed from the craziness and insanity he had found himself in. He wondered if there were fallen angels doing things like this somewhere else in the underworld, or angels just trying to live their lives peacefully in heaven. When Azazel told him he wanted to stop the fighting before more people were sucked into the conflict, his mind had immediately gone to Rias and the others and wanting to prevent them from being sucked into a war. But now he understood that these were the people most in danger if peace didn't prevail. These would be the people that suffered if war broke out. They would die if the Chaos Brigade got what they wanted. It was just another reason to make sure the Chaos Brigade failed whatever they tried to do. Hey, Ni-chan. Naruto felt a tug on his shirt and looked down to see a group of young children had gathered at his side while he was watching Rias. He turned to face the young devils and looked down at the girl, asking him, "You came with Rias Ojo-sama, right? Does she know you?" Yeah. He nodded, kneeling down to better face the shorter children directly. "Actually, I'm a member of Rias' peerage, one of her pawns." Whoa, the kids marveled at the fact he was part of her personal peerage. One of the boys stepped up with a grin. "That is so cool. You're so lucky you get to be alongside Rias Ojo-sama. Does that mean you get to play in the rating games too?" He wanted to say that he wasn't allowed to join in, but their eyes were so big. So big and innocent, and looking at him with hope that he could tell them what they were like. Biting the inside of his cheek, he smiled and nodded as the children cheered. "Someday I want to join a big peerage like hers and fight in the rating games," one of the other boys said excitedly as he imagined his future dream of one day standing proudly in the games their world so greatly appreciated. "Maybe one day I'll join Oju-sama's peerage too." "There's no way you'll join Oju-sama's peerage. You have to be super special or have some awesome power to join." "Then I'll make one up." The young boy looked up at Naruto. "Ni-chan, what can you do? How did you get into the peerage?" "By having my guts scrounged out by a psychotic fallen angel bitch really reaching to prove herself worthy to some crazy old man who then kidnapped me and stuck a sacred gear in my arm where the ancient demon fox spirit inside my body now resides after we came to this world from another reality, universe, dimension. Wherever the fuck they were before coming here. I'm a ninja," and Rias was impressed by what I could do. "You're a ninja? That's so cool." "He's not a ninja." One of the kids pointed to what he wore. Ninjas dress in black and hide in the shadows and stuff. He's dressed all nice and standing where everyone can see him. Naruto's eye twitched as the kids started to argue over the rules and semantics of being a ninja. You kids know I have a life outside of just that, right? And I don't look great in all black. He smirked and then clapped his hands together with his index and middle fingers out. But if you want to see ninja stuff, then I'm happy to oblige. Naruto disappeared in a puff of white smoke that got the attention of not only the kids but the other people in the courtyard. The children all gasped in shock when the smoke disappeared and revealed that Naruto was no longer standing in the same place. They looked around frantically trying to spot him before a sharp whistle grabbed their attention. Naruto waved at the people watching, standing on the side of a building and staying completely parallel to the ground. Once he did, he leapt off the wall and spun through the air, crossing his fingers and summoning several clones to land beside him in unison. The kids cheered and the people watching clapped at the display. Rias chuckled and shook her head before clapping along with the others at her boyfriend's display. Clones? You made actual clones? That's so cool. Ni-chan, can you teach me how to do that? The Narutos laughed before one shook his head. Sorry kiddo, but I'm not sure if I can even teach this technique to others. Maybe to get into the raiding game you can figure a way to make your own? Are these clones real? One of the girls reached out and gasped when there was actual resistance where she touched his leg. Are the clones just as tough as you? One punch to the side and a clone popped like a balloon. Why yeah, don't do that. What about your bag? Do you have ninja stuff in here? The clones dispelled and Naruto looked back when one of the kids started to search through the contents of Ria's bag. Naruto jumped back in a start and reached out. Wait, I don't know what's. Oh, it's food. The kid said as they pulled out chips and sandwiches and bentos and drinks. The whiskered devil looked confused before kneeling beside them and looking in the bag as well. There was food and drinks and even a blanket to sit on. Rias had planned a picnic for them and wanted it to be a surprise. He looked up and smiled at Rias while she blushed and pouted cutely in embarrassment. So she wanted the picnic to be a surprise, cute. Hey, what are these? One of the kids pulled out several cup ramen from the bag. Is this food? Ramen. One of the cups was snatched out of the young devil's hands and raised into the air. Yes, best picnic ever. Ramen? What's ramen, Ni-chan? What, are you serious? The young children looked up at him in genuine, earnest confusion. They honestly had no idea what this food was. He looked at the cup in his hands, and then the ones they were holding, and then over at Rias. She shrugged with a charming smile on her face, saying it was his food to do whatever he wanted with. Here, Naruto handed it back to one of the children and made sure each one had a cup in hand. He then asked one of the older adults for a pot of hot water. 3 minutes after pouring them into the cups, the children started to dig into their meal and enjoy themselves. They let out little gasps of delight at how tasty the noodles and broth were. Wow! This is delicious. It tastes so good. Ni-chan, do you eat stuff like this all the time? You bet. Naruto smirked before realization hit and he sighed. Actually I used to. But now I have a lot more people eating with me and I can't just have it all day every day. Wait, did we just take your food? Nope, I gave it to you. Naruto patted some of the kids on the head and smiled. And I'm happy to know I converted a few new people to the wonderful beauty of ramen. We need to get more of this now. Rias and some adults from the village watched the children continue to devour their ramen and cheerfully ask questions about where it came from. The redhead giggled before looking down at the inventory resupply request for the village before she added a little something at the end. If it was such a delicious treat, how could she not let them have some more? Devil, so Matabi is supposed to be somewhere nearby, right? Yes. We gave her a large plot of land that should give her some isolation. The closest neighboring settlement is a village some miles away. Rias and Naruto made their way through the trees and forest towards their next destination. Naruto had been very anxious about Matabi and Isobu's condition since they were given asylum in the underworld and north respectively. He had constantly wanted to contact Sirzex for updates on them both, and being promised that they were doing fine. But he still wanted to see it for himself and Rias thought she could quell his worries. They would have to trek out her themselves in order to find her. I trust the people in your territory Rias, but it's the Biju I'm worried about. Naruto pushed a branch out of his way and kept it bent back so Rias could walk through easier. You gotta understand that everyone back in my world was hostile with them. And sometimes they were hostile with each other too. The only ones they could trust were their own Jinchuriki, and even that was pretty rare among all the people they were sealed into. In the long history of Jinchuriki and Biju, there were very few pairs that could cooperate with each other and not just treat each other like prisoners in their living prisons. You and Kurama seem to get on well. Yeah, after 16 years of anger, repression, blame, spite, and just nasty feelings towards each other. Rias looked surprised by that revelation. She thought Naruto and Kurama were a very strong pair, minus the constant gripes and barbs they threw at each other. She believed it was just ribbing from two comrades that had been partnered together for life, instead of being saddled with one another with a lifetime to despise each other. I considered Kurama a hostile force inside me most days and considered him a neutral force on the best. We weren't even friends until I found out what his name was. You didn't even know his name? What did you call him before Kurama? Kyuubi. The Biju were distinguished by the number of tails they had back then. Wow, Rias looked aside uncomfortably before speaking up. It sounds like things were difficult to work out between them and the people. Yeah, and I'm worried that they could still feel that way. The last thing that happened to them in my world was them being collected to form a bigger, even more monstrous creature. And the first thing that happens in this world is them being cut for their meat and being used as weapons. They spotted the empty field Matabi was resting in and emerged out from the trees. I'm worried that she'll still be wary of. Mata-chan, can you warm up the fire here please? Here you go. Mata-san, we're cooking some meat on this side, you want yours rare or well done? Cook mine up nice and brown please. Hey Mata-san, we made some drawings of you. My tails aren't that puffy. Turns out the distance between Matabi and the nearest village was one the people readily traveled. And unlike the tense heavy distrust Naruto expected to find between the Biju and people she didn't know, there seemed to be some sort of party or barbecue going on. Elders rested by her for warmth and adults cooked meals from the residual heat she gave off, while children played and ran around the cat's massive body. Both Rias and Naruto were shocked at this sight, but thankfully two little people standing by the cat's head talking to her could help. Kaneko, Gasper, the masked Dampier and young Nekomata turned around when they were called. Gasp waved, Bucko, Naruto-senpai. Hey, the meek bishop had his bag over his head to help deal with his nervousness around crowds and the giant new cat he was conversing with. We're having a party to introduce the villagers to Mata-chan properly. I didn't know you two were down here today. Kaneko nodded, her ears and tail sprouted out to join her fellow cat. We came earlier. Matabi-san told me she was getting along with the villagers nearby, and she wanted some help being introduced to them properly, so I came to check up on everything. I'm very happy you came all this way for me. Kaneko nodded and held up her hand towards the Biju, letting her hand ignite with blue flames. Matabi smiled. I feel at ease knowing Kitten and Gyabag are here to help me. Peeved. They looked at Naruto after his sudden scoff and attempt to cover his mouth. He looked at the two freshmen and snickered, Gyabag. It's Gya-kun's new nickname, and it fits surprisingly well. And no it doesn't, Kitten told me that this nervous little creature's name is Gasper, but that I should call him Gya-kun or Gyasuke instead. He seems to revel in hiding inside a bag, so I thought that name would be most appropriate. You were right to think that. Stop making fun of me, senpai. That's enough. Ria's stern voice stopped all the squabbling between her servants. She looked at Naruto with a firm expression to try and make him feel guilty for his teasing, but by the grin on his face he wasn't feeling any shame at that fact. Kaneko looked content in her messing around as well. She sighed and instead looked up at the Biju. Matabi, how are you finding the space? I suppose it isn't as isolated as we thought, but you do seem to be adapting to it well. Oh yes, it's strange to have a space to myself after all these years. Matabi lifted her head and looked around at the tall trees, wide fields, distant mountains, and all the people that had come to visit her. It's so different that it is almost overwhelming, but it is a welcome change. And I want to thank you very much for lobbying to give me this chance. Think nothing of it. Naruto said you deserved a place to recover, and I was more than ready to accommodate. Plus Kaneko would be upset if her new friend wasn't treated properly. She patted Kaneko's head and made the young rook's feline ears twitch around her hand. I'd also like to thank you for trusting her so dearly with your power. I'm sure we'll put it to good use. I can try to give that power to more people, Matabi offered. I'm not sure how giving multiple people that kind of power will affect how powerful it will be for each individual person, but I'm willing to test it. I attempted to give Gyabag some of that power earlier, but when I touched him I got grossed out and stopped trying. Gasper whimpered sadly and sniffled under his bag. Naruto tried to pat the sad bishop's head but realized the bag was in the way and instead settled for a shoulder pat of solidarity. There. I appreciate the thought, but I think you should hold off on that for the time being. Rias advised the giant feline. I don't think it would make things very easy if there were a dozen or more people running around with your power in their hands. Kaneko is the only one of these Neo-Jinchuriki at the moment. Can't believe I'm actively using Azazel's terminology like that. And I think we should leave it like that for now. Very well. To be honest, I don't think I'm quite up for handing out power like that to multiple people anyway. I just thought I'd offer. And thank you for being considerate. But even though not every devil is a part of the Chaos Brigade, there are still a number of them that have their own agenda or wish to oppose my brother and his fellow leaders. So I don't think we should be spreading this power out too wildly until we can make sure it can be used responsibly. Very well, I'll hold off on connecting with anyone else for now. Rias nodded and looked back at the others. I'm sure we're bound to get a few complaints about that from the other devils, but for now we'll keep her safe and away from anyone looking to take her power. So for now. Oh, what about your date? Gasper inquired. The older devils looked between each other as the bag-wearing Dampier continued. You stopped in the middle to come check on Mata-chan, right? But you two should get back to it. Bucko was working all day yesterday on the food and Senpei was fretting about how it would go. And Kaneko-chan has been thinking about it all day. The young bishop reeled back in horror as his bag was snatched off his head. Kaneko-chan. Why? I need my bag. I can't do anything without my bag. Go get it. Kaneko crumpled up his security bag and tossed it aside for him to chase. The younger girl looked up at her seniors, the same stoic expression on her face while her ears did drop just the tiniest amount. You two should go enjoy your date. I'll watch over Matabi-san. She couldn't have anyone better. Naruto smiled, holding out his fist for the younger devil to knock hers against. Once they were done, he ruffled her hair a little and caused her face to scrunch up a little when he brushed her ears. He waved goodbye to her and the giant Biju. We'll see you later. Rias lingered back and looked down at Kaneko, who hesitated to look up at her. Kaneko felt a soft hand rest in her hair and gently rub it, the same familiar feeling she had felt when she was first taken into the peerage and she didn't trust anyone. She looked up at the small, almost apologetic smile on Ria's face as she comforted her. I'm sorry. It's okay. Kaneko quickly answered. Please enjoy your date. You were working all day yesterday, looking forward to it. Yes, I was. Rias smiled and bent down to face her precious Rook directly, and you'll probably feel the same way when it's your turn. That brought a smile back to the Nekomata's face as she gave a small but hopeful nod. It probably wouldn't happen for a while, but one day it would be her fretting and stressed out that everything had to be perfect. Wearing a nice dress and walking around in the warm sun with her arm locked around his. It was a day she would look forward to forever. Her time would come, but for now it was theirs. Devil. Alright, this is it. Rias shielded her eyes from the light and stepped up until the tree properly blocked her from the rays. This is perfect. Nice spot. Naruto looked up at the tree at the top of the hill they would be eating under while they had their picnic. Once they reached the top, he turned around and looked out at the scenery they had chosen. It looked like almost the entire territory was in sight of their seated spot. They could see nearly everything in the Gremory land, and it still went on forever. I bet you can never get sick of this view. It certainly does take the breath away. Food's ready. He turned and found her seated on a blanket already taking out all the food. She held up a sandwich for him and laughed. I wanted to surprise you with ramen, but someone gave it all away. What, was I supposed to ignore the helpless look of children who had never had one of the tastiest meals ever created? I didn't say that. Actually, I was very impressed by your maturity and selflessness. Rias countered. I honestly didn't think it was possible for you to give someone else your ramen. I was surprised too. Look how much I've grown. The couple shared a hearty laugh as Naruto bit down on the last of his sandwich and then looked over at Rias as she quietly started on hers. They sat in silence for a while and just looked out over the landscape around them. Naruto patted his hands clean and smiled. Maybe we should think about bringing the ramen business down here? Maybe you should. Rias finished her meal and cleaned her fingers before continuing. I'd be more than happy to help, but I think you should try starting it yourself. Naruto scoffed. Me? That's a terrible idea. I don't know how to run a business. It isn't that hard. The blonde stared at her skeptically for a few seconds before the heiress relented. Okay, it is actually quite hard, but you can learn. I'm sure you'd be able to handle it. There are plenty of classes and courses in school and college that would help. Haha, me? There's no way I can go to college. Naruto laughed, shaking his head and looking up as Rias looked annoyed by his answer. I mean, I'm not really the school type anyway. I didn't think about going to college after I finished my senior year. What did you want to do? Rias asked as she pulled out the bentos and handed him the one she made. I mean, what did you want to do after you graduated? Well, I'm not sure. They sat in silence as a breeze softly ran over them and rustled the branches above them. Leaves detached and slowly floated down around them as Naruto looked up. When I was still human, I was just working at the ramen shop, sometimes going to school, and just living without really thinking about what I wanted to do. Naruto scratched his cheek. Since then I've been pretty preoccupied with the present to worry about my future. Attacked by fallen angels, fighting in a raiding game against an immortal, getting kidnapped, stopping a war, finding the Biju, and getting a girlfriend have really sucked up my time lately. Hey, well, it has been a hectic time since we met. Rias agreed and moved some hair out of her eye. But what about you? What did you want to be when you were back in your old world? Well, I always wanted to be a ninja. I think you have that accomplished. And after that I wanted to be Hokage. What is a Hokage anyway? The leader of my village. The most accomplished ninja recognized by everyone to be their head. They look out for the people and make sure everything runs smoothly. Rias smiled sadly as she watched him look out fondly and wistfully at a village in his mind she could not see. That's all I ever wanted to be. Do you want to go back home? He looked over and noticed Rias' sad and worried expression, dreading how he would answer. Naruto thought for a moment and nodded. I wanted to find a way back. I want to know that the village is safe and the world was okay after we were done fighting Madara. And do you? Do you want to go back there? He put down his bento box and stood up to walk over to her side. He knelt down beside her, brushing his hand along her cheek and against her hair before gently lifting her chin so she looked at him. He smiled with certainty. I want to make sure they are still okay, but I'm not just going to leave. Not when you're here. Not when everyone is still here. I won't ever do that. It might take you a very long time until you find your world again. I'm a devil now. I have nothing but time. Her eyes watered, but she refused to cry at such a silly thought. He wasn't going to leave, and she should have known that. She gently squeezed the hand on her cheek before Naruto sat down beside her on the blanket. She cut up some of the meat from her bento and held it up to feed him. I can honestly say I didn't expect you to have a desire to hold public office. You certainly don't look like the kind of person who would want to get into politics. Say ah. Ah. Naruto bit down on the treat she offered and chewed before shaking his head. Honestly, I never really considered the politics and paperwork a part of the job. I wanted to be Hokage because it was the most respected position in my entire village. I wanted it to prove to people that I was more than what they saw of me, and I wanted them to acknowledge me for who I was. After a while I started to realize that my reason for becoming the Hokage wasn't right, and that instead of doing it so people could acknowledge me, I should have been aiming to do it because I wanted to protect the people in my village. You wanted them to acknowledge you. And that's because Jinchurikis are ostracized back in your world, aren't they? Yeah. Naruto nodded and looked up at the rays of light peeking through the branches and resting over them. He felt a weight on his shoulder and looked aside to see Rias was using it to rest her head after finishing her bento. Most people are wary and afraid of the Biju and their Jinchuriki because it is a person carrying a terrible monster that can cause untold damage if it breaks out. People would worry that the Jinchuriki could be swayed by what the Biju said, or willingly attack with the Biju's power to carry out whatever destruction it wanted. For me though, it was because of an attack Kurama committed on my village the day I was born. He rested a hand against his stomach. Someone summoned Kurama out and controlled him to attack the village. When he did, he killed a lot of people and brought damage no one had witnessed before. And after he was sealed inside me, People overcome with grief and trauma saw me as Kurama instead. It took a long time for them to see I was Naruto Uzumaki instead of the fox that attacked our village, but they did see me for who I am in the end. I don't think I should ever go to your village. Naruto looked down and noticed the glare and frown that Rias was showing. Why not? Because I'm sure I would not be very happy being around those people. Rias seethed with a furrowed brow. Even if they were suffering from a pain I cannot even begin to imagine, I refuse to accept that as an excuse for how they treated you. She looked up at his amused grin and bristled silently. I can see you've already forgiven them, but I think I would have to work a few things out before I'm satisfied. I accepted what happened a long time ago, and I knew that it helped make me into the person I am now. Although I do find it cute you're getting all riled up on my behalf. He flicked her nose and she pouted in response, but I'll be honest, I'm glad the Biju are in this world and the people they connect with won't have to live with that stigma the previous generation did. A brand new start to build from. I'm sure Kaneko will be very proud to hear you talk about her like that. Naruto chuckled and rested his head against the top of Rias as they sat together. Their hands remained locked together as they looked out over the vast expanse of land in front of them. Rias, yes? Can I tell you something, and promise me you won't think it's stupid until I'm done? Of course. I was so happy to get Kurama back into my life. And when I found out that the Biju survived as well, I thought it was a miracle. And then somewhere in the back of my mind, I had a silly thought that I didn't want to even let grow. Rias lifted her head and looked up at the man she loved as he hesitated with his words. I thought it might be possible that Sasuke could have survived as well. Your friend, Sasuke? She had heard Naruto mention that name a few times since he had opened up about his past. The rival that had joined his team and made him want to keep getting better. The friend that had lost his family and sought revenge against the people who did it to the point where he betrayed his friends and village. The foe that had nearly taken his life and joined their enemies to further his goal. The ally that had stood beside him and fought their greatest foe before sacrificing himself to end it all. Rias thought that his relationship with this Sasuke person was very deep and complex, and a little muddled thanks to the revelation that they had their first kiss together, but when she heard him talk about his friend Sasuke, she could only be shocked that he could still call someone like that his friend. But he died, didn't he? He was at the very center of that blast that nearly killed you and sent you towards our world. Yeah, but I couldn't help myself but think that it might be possible. I mean I survived, and the Biju survived too, so I thought it might be possible. Naruto looked over and saw the look on Ria's face that said she didn't want to dissuade him when it was obvious he was still hopeful. He sighed, yeah, I know it's a stretch. But still I couldn't help but think it was a possibility because, he paused and shrugged. I mean after all the crazy and unbelievable shit I've seen in my life, before and after coming here, how could I not even entertain the idea? Naruto. Rias sat up, taking hold of his hand and squeezing it gently. She looked sad and worried, but looked him in the eyes. I know how nice it might be to think that, and there are a lot of impossible things in this world. But I think your friend is gone. He's been gone for a while now, and even though Kurama and the others survived, that doesn't mean anyone else could. Naruto looked down at her hand that squeezed his tightly in a show of support. And then back up at her face, naked with raw emotion and sympathy for his feelings. He squeezed her hands in return, and showed her she didn't need to worry. With a deep breath he looked down and held her hands between his. When I first woke up in this world, I was so horrified. I couldn't believe that out of all of us, I was the one that survived. Not Kurama, or the Biju, or Sasuke. The guy who could do anything and get out of anything, it was me. And I was all alone. Naruto. I couldn't handle it at first. I just kept talking to myself, expecting Kurama or Gyuki or one of the others to respond. After I got out of the hospital I just kept walking around the first place I arrived in trying to find some kind of clue or proof that I didn't come here alone. That maybe Sasuke just sulked off somewhere and was doing his usual lone wolf shtick in this unfamiliar world. I convinced myself that was more of a possibility than the idea that he could actually be dead. The blonde gave a heavy sigh and rubbed his eyes. I had spent so long looking to find him and fight my way through everything to get back to him. And after all that effort he just died, and I had to accept that he was gone. I thought I had after all this time. And the first opportunity I have I try and convince myself that he could still be alive somehow. Damn it. It's okay. Rias ran her hand along his hair and tried to soothe him as he fumed angrily to himself. She let out a small chuckle and got his attention. If I can be honest, I am really surprised how dedicated you are to your old friend. I think I can count on one hand the number of people I know who would go that length for someone. I had to. Naruto smiled joylessly. He was one of my first friends, and someone I would call my brother. If I turned my back on him, I would have tossed away one of the first bonds I ever made. But after everything he did and how he hurt you. Rias looked conflicted. I just don't know how you could still push yourself so far to help him like that. You say it like it's impossible for you to even imagine, but that's not true. Naruto said as Rias looked at him oddly. Remember Kiba? How he was obsessed with finding those swords that caused him to lose all his friends, and how he was almost ready to abandon the group just to find them himself. Imagine that, but instead of getting through to him in time, he went all the way and hunted them and left the peerage. Could you just let him walk away like that without doing anything? And if someone like Akano turned away and was going to do something that would endanger herself, could you turn your back on her? Wouldn't you try whatever you could to reach out and stop them before it was too late? Rias stared ahead in silence before she was left gawking. A mirthless chuckle escaped her lips before she rubbed her head. Oh wow, that is a very good point. It sounds more reasonable when I imagine it like that. If one of them made a decision like that, if anyone from my peerage thought to take a risk like that, I don't think I could just let them go. I am not sure how far I would go, but I would have to do something. Rias contemplated how far she would go before she looked up and saw Naruto smiling warmly at her. She blushed and looked aside in embarrassment. Why are you making me talk about stuff like this? You remember that this is a date, right? We should be talking about simpler subjects than this. Like school or movies or something. You're tutoring me and we watch all the movies together. Should we talk about the weather instead? Because it is nice. Shut up. Rias grabbed his head and pulled it down harshly into her lap. He blinked in surprise and looked up at the lovely redhead who frowned down at him. You sass me, young man, and I'll have to punish you. Was sitting down in her lap a punishment? He smiled softly and that caused Rias to frown and pinch his cheek. Well, if it was, he wasn't going to argue with her. Devil, Rias yawned and stretched out her arms after they arrived back at the Gremory household. The servants and workers greeted them back from their date, and Rias had led them to her room. Naruto remembered that she requested that he didn't visit her room ever without her being there to allow it. He expected that it might be because it was a large room and there was something she probably wanted to hide. He wasn't expecting a huge room filled with memorabilia and souvenirs from her time in Japan. There were ink painting and calligraphy books and folk stories bound up in scrolls. There was even a picture to the side of Rias dressed as a Shinto priestess besides Akano when they were younger. When Kaneko has told him Rias was obsessed with Japanese stuff, he really should have taken that to heart. Why, you're looking around a lot. Rias muttered meekly with pink cheeks as she saw him study her room. It's not that weird, is it? It is just a few things I picked up over the years, nothing really important. Why, you didn't have to stare at all of it. I think your room is packed. There's barely enough space for us to move through. He was exaggerating, of course, because even though the room was crowded, it was still large enough that the paths towards the bed, dresser, and bathroom were very easy to maneuver. But his teasing caused Rias to fret and blush, which was always worth it. You know, with all this foreign stuff cluttering your room, I'm gonna start feeling self-conscious and wonder if you only started dating me because I'm a ninja. For your sake, I'm going to consider that a bad joke. Rias said firmly, grumpily pouting his way before turning up her nose and making her way to sit on the edge of her bed. I had an interest in you long before I ever knew anything about your past. I thought you'd be a little more proud that you could woo someone just by your own merit. The fact that I could woo you should probably make you feel a little concerned. Naruto snickered as he walked around the room and examined her paraphernalia a little closer. He felt her glare a hole in the back of his head and he looked back at her with a smile. Thank you for giving me your love so soon. You're welcome, and good job backtracking. The blonde looked around a little closer at all the stuff that littered her room and rose into small piles of certain things. There was a pile of stuff she had bought at Akihabara. Some specials, foods and snacks she had gotten from both Osaka and Hokkaido. But the biggest pile had to be for Kyoto, which looked like she had bought just about everything. There were charms and fortunes piled up together. There was even an ink drawing of some Kyoto folklore that looked like an angry man standing on top of a long white dragon. But among all the stuff she kept in her room, Naruto noticed the pictures she had taken from visiting all of these places. He especially enjoyed the picture of her, Akano, Sona, and Tsubaki taken in front of a golden temple during their junior year. Kinkakuji was my favorite spot to visit in Kyoto. Ria spoke up from the bed as she took off her shoes and let her feet breathe. She watched her boyfriend stare over her photos. I just adore all the history and beauty of that spot and of Kyoto in general. I still can't believe you didn't come on that trip. Couldn't be bothered, and it didn't seem that interesting at the time. Naruto placed the picture back down and stepped over to join her on the edge of the bed, although if you find it so interesting I am a little curious about what that place has to offer. I wish you would have gone when we all did. Maybe we would have met sooner. Rias wondered, we were in the same year, and you were brought to the school by Oni-sama, and yet you and I never interacted. Do you think we would have been this close if we met sooner? With how much of a miserable punk I was being and you the stubborn, unyielding princess, Naruto joked, I don't know if it would have ended as well as it did. Ye have so little faith. Rias remarked, letting out an uncomfortable moan as she rubbed her shoulder. I think you should be optimistic and believe that we would have started dating even earlier if we had met sooner. Are you okay? I am. Just a little sore. Rias groaned as she patted her shoulders and back to alleviate some of the stress. We walked around a lot and climbed that hill and that left me a little tired. She didn't notice his eyes dip lower and stare at her giant breasts as they bounced and jiggled with her movement. With weighty protrusions like that, he was honestly surprised that she wasn't constantly crying out in agony about her spine. I think I'll need to set an appointment with a masseuse when I get the chance. Do you want me to help? Rias looked at Naruto oddly after his offer. He climbed up further in the bed. I haven't really given anyone a massage before, but if I can make it a little easier to bear then I'm happy to help. Rias looked over her shoulder. Do you know how to give a massage? Rub the shoulders and back, right? She didn't look totally convinced. If I'm doing something right or wrong, just make sure to speak up. After a second Rias decided to relax and let him give it a try. She sat up on the edge of the bed, closed her eyes and lowered her shoulders as his hands settled around her collarbone and started to massage the muscles along her back. Naruto pushed his thumbs into her shoulders and rubbed circles in hopes that it would loosen her muscles and back pain, but after a moment he heard Rias let out a dissatisfied moan. What's wrong? You're doing it a little too hard. Rias said with a pinched face as her shoulders stiffened and Naruto's massage had a little too much force in it. Less push in the joint and more gentle rub. It doesn't work if, Rias paused as Naruto complied and started adapting her changes to his style. It was still a little rough but Rias did feel more relaxed as he went on. That's better. Good. The amateur massage continued on, with Rias giving some pointers and Naruto being quick to fix his mistakes. After a few minutes with the massage continuing, Rias had stopped giving him advice on how to do better. Naruto thought it might be because she was just letting the massage happen and would then critique it when she had enough. But then Naruto finally stopped being distracted by his thoughts and listened. Rias was moaning, and not just in relief that the aches and pains were finally starting to leave her, but in the sensual, pleasurable way as her face became slightly flushed and her breathing started to hasten. It was heavy and alluring in the way that had almost made him lose his focus just so he could listen. And her involuntary moaning had caused an involuntary reaction in him as well. Naruto. Rias heaved before gasping lightly as he pulled his hands away and wrapped them around her under her breasts. The flushed redhead looked aside as he rested his chin on her shoulder. What? I had to stop. He admitted, a blush on his face as well after suffering through the erotic noises she had started to release. There was only so much of that I could listen to until it was too much. How do you think I feel? Mortified, Ria's face lowered in shame. I just wanted a relaxing massage and I ended up with I don't even know what that was. I was just following your instructions. Why, you shouldn't have done it so well. She whined, still struggling to catch her breath while she was still on the throes of her experience. She looked to her boyfriend, Naruto, lifting his head from her shoulder to look at her as well. They noticed they were both flushed, either from embarrassment or just how hot and bothered they were feeling. They leaned in and shared a kiss, quickly furthering it until their tongues started to swirl together. After their deep kiss, Naruto pulled back and gently kissed her cheek and down to her chin. Naruto, He kissed her neck. Rias let out a sudden moan and shuddered to the sensation that just struck her. Her eyes widened at her involuntary response and she looked over at Naruto. He was also surprised by her reaction, but his eyes glinted after a moment when he realized what it meant. Oh. Naruto leaned in and nuzzled into her neck again, lightly kissing and smothering it while her head was hanging back. Rias gasped and moaned heatedly as she felt pleasure run through her entire body with his nibbling. Her legs kicked out uncontrollably, jolts and shaking through her limbs as she tightly gripped the arms circled around her waist. And Naruto, you can't. Azazel said something to me yesterday. Naruto muttered, ceasing his kissing to just let some heavy breaths wash over her neck. Even such a simple act was enough of a stimulant and caused Rias to flinch. He said that I was just reacting to our relationship, and hadn't taken any kind of leaps in our time together. I had to admit that he had a point, but right now I feel like I'm changing that around, don't you? Rias panted, her eyes misty and mind swimming. Why you have to stop? You can't be doing kya. Naruto pulled her back and dropped her on the bed. He crawled over her, hunger in his eyes as he smirked cockily. You sure I can't be doing this? Because if I remember correctly you did stuff like this to me when you wanted to. He leaned in and kissed her neck again, causing her to buckle and shudder. You kissed me. While she moaned, his hand settled over one of her breasts and groped it tightly. Once again he had to marvel at just how voluminous and responsive her chest was as he squeezed what he could manage in one hand. You touched me. Ah, in your hand. Naruto's other hand softly dragged along her waist and stomach, traveled down, it tangled with her skirt before dipping under it, and started to do. His index finger pulled back her laced panty and allowed his handroom to enter. Unspeakable things. En Naruto, ooh. Rias screamed as she felt one of Naruto's fingers penetrate her folds and enter her. The crimson-haired seductress found herself the one being toyed with as she was attacked on three fronts. The spot where Naruto kissed and licked her neck, leaving marks and most likely a hickey she'd have to hide, her chest, where his hand was squeezing and playing with her breast in a way that made her back arch. And where his finger was slowly pushing along her insides and rubbing them softly, causing her legs to buckle and jolt. What's wrong, my king? He asked patronizingly, smirking in delight seeing Rias buckle and react to his efforts. He hadn't planned to do this, and he wasn't sure how good his technique actually was. But overwhelming her with 3 strikes at once seemed like it was getting the desired results. Can't handle this. Rias' voice went low and high with different pitches as she felt every shock in her system. She nearly screamed at the top of her lungs as Naruto's fingers started to move more energetically inside her. She felt him rub and push further in and explore around. His other hand had worked her breast so thoroughly that she could feel her hardened nipple protruding through her brasserie and along his palm. And his kissing along her neck, which she just found out was super sensitive and should be protected from now on, was causing her mind to go blank. But if she could just hold out a little longer. One of Naruto's other fingers grazed along her folds as well, and his thumb had started rubbing along her clitoris. As much as she wanted to remain focused, and as much as she wanted this feeling to continue forever, her body could only take so much. Rias finally exclaimed after a few minutes of stimulation before her release had finally crashed down on her. Her body stilled and dropped back down in exhaustion. Her breathing was frantic and her eyes were watery as she regained her senses. She looked up at Naruto with hazy eyes and breathed softly. And Naruto. You okay? He asked, pulling back his hand from her panty and sitting up at her side. Without thinking, Naruto realized his fingers were wet, and raised them into his line of sight so he could examine them. His fingers closed together and opened up again so he could see the light sheen of liquid between them from her. Oh wow. He noticed her eyes narrow behind her glasses while she looked at him stare at his hand. Are you mad? Clothes. Huh? Clothes. Rias pulled off her glasses, off. She yanked off her top and left herself in her underwear as her breasts bounced with her movement. She started to fiddle with her bra. Now? Here? Really? Alright. Naruto grabbed his shirt and pulled it off over his head as he leaned in and took her lips again. The two fell back on the bed, half naked and embracing while they kissed so passionately the heat overtook their rationality. Are they in there? They are. Go in and get them. Are you sure they want to be a part of the thing? I'm sure they'd love to join, so go in and invite them. Why me? Just do it. Fine. The door to Ria's bedroom opened and Issei entered. Bucko, Naruto-senpai, Lucifer-sama and Azazel-sensei need your help with something. Think you can? Wow. This room is pretty messy. It's packed almost too. Oh my god, ow, sorry. I didn't know you two were. I mean I really shoulda. I didn't see. Well I mean they're right there and they are as glorious as I had always. A condensed ball of demonic power transmuted to rock flew through the air and beamed Issei right in the nose. The pawn toppled over and clutched his injured spot with a pained groan and cry. Naruto and Rias were quickly catching their breath, Naruto zipping up his pants and Rias clutching her unhooked bra to her chest. Issei, why did you enter without asking? Ichi told me to. They looked over at the door and weren't surprised to see Azazel's cheeky smirk in the doorway. The fallen angel stepped in and leaned against the frame. Sorry about interrupting you kids again. Seriously, the universe must be speaking through me or something, but we need your help. No fuck off. It's super important, we're not in the mood. You're in the mood for something obviously. The two glowered at him and he raised his hands in defense. Look, we just need you two to come stand in and help us work out some kinks on our new project. Once we're done you can come back here and work out your own kinks. Who knows, it might even help spice things up. Destruction and raw elements started to build together, it's for the good of the underworld and our future. They looked skeptical but Rias dispelled her power. What is it exactly? A new joint project between some of the factions. If it works, we can revolutionize the underworld like it has never seen before. Azazel pressed, interested? The two devils shared a look before reluctantly nodding. Fine, we'll help. But only if we can get some privacy after it is all done. I swear. Azazel promised. Now Issei might need to have some color added to the black spot that was his nose, but we should be good. Ready to help change the world? I am Rias Gremory, heiress to the Gremory household and sister to Lucifer. She proudly stated as she put her clothes back on and smiled. Anything to better the state of the underworld is something I'm ready to give my all to. Devil, okay. Now these are the monsters that have come to drain the breasts of the underworld of their size. They will latch on to the chest of every woman here and reduce them to mere egg cups. Rias, now you say your line. Ayah, no, how could this happen? Rias drolly monotoned while dressed up in her princess consume. We can't let these terrible beasts come and reduce our bodacious bazoons. She rolled her eyes. Please save us, Opie Dragon. Never fear, princess. The Opie Dragon is here to help. Issei dropped down, clad in his red scale mail as he made exaggerated poses and gestures like the classic tokusatsu heroes of old. If the booby cretins wish to reduce the size of the glorious memories of this land, then you'll have to go through me. Perfect, Issei-kun. Sirzex and the other crew applauded from the side of the stage. Now destroy the monsters that come swinging in. Poorly crafted monsters with wings hanging from sticks bounced around Issei and Rias that would be altered in post-production. Issei easily knocked them aside. Now make the claim. You bastard, you will not reduce the size of the tits of the world as long as I can help it. Do you hear me, sage? And now Naruto-kun, you come out and say. All eyes turned to the other man on the stage as they waited for his read. Naruto stood there in silence, body slack and arms hanging at his side as he had no energy he was willing to expend for this task. He was dressed in ancient cloaks, and had frog-like googles over his eyes to give him the look of a frog sage attacking the breast kingdom. Naruto-kun, can you say the lines? No, but no fuck off. But we're so far, and you're already in your costume, so can't you? I said no, come on Naruto. Azazel walked up beside Sirzex in his directing chair. Sunglasses over his eyes and impatiently tapping a watch on his wrist he didn't have before. We're wasting time, which is wasting money, and we can't abide by that. Don't you want to help the children of the future? Not with this. Naruto lifted off his goggles. Not with those. He'd pointed to the fake monsters hung off the strings. And not with whatever the fuck this breast-related story is supposed to be. Just, what the fuck? Damn drama queen. Azazel and Sirzex quickly shared a look before the fallen angel nodded knowingly. He licked his lips and looked over the brim of his glasses. Naruto, if the lines are too difficult to remember or understand, we don't mind changing them around a little. Difficult to understand? You must be joking, Opie Dragon. Stand aside, you fool. I shall storm down from on high and reduce this entire world to cup sizes of BOR lower. What's hard to remember about that? My fucking problem with this is... Cut. Searsex called out and clapped his hands. A little too loud and enthusiastic for the character we are going with. But we can fix it in post. Okay. Issei-kun, we're going to try the song now. Rias, Naruto-kun, you can get off the stage for the time being. Rias and Naruto dragged themselves off the stage and found a spot to drop down on after their humiliating showing. Rias yanked the heels she had been forced in off her feet while Naruto tore off his goggles and tossed them aside. Rias looked down at herself and noticed just how much cleavage this children's show outfit revealed. I can't believe we got dragged into this. Your brother and Azazel are creating a superhero obsessed with tits to sell off to kids. We have officially thrown away our morality. Naruto looked down and pulled on the garments he wore. I don't even know what I'm supposed to be. You're a frog sage who is extremely apathetic and bored with what he has to do. Well, that's fitting, considering I couldn't give a shit what this is about. The couple sat in silence and watched Issei dance and sing his theme song while some kids came out to join him. Naruto looked over. So when this is over, should we? Sorry, Rias interrupted, but I think the mood is ruined. You too? He sighed. I'm about as flaccid as I've ever been after all that's happened. Is that the line I'm coming back on? Rias and Naruto looked down as his sacred gear appeared with Kurama's voice. Hey, welcome back. Sorry I was so late, got a little preoccupied with other things. So what's going? Dragon opie dragon, grope suck pafu. There are so many types of breasts, but he likes the big ones the best. And just like that I'm fucking off again. The light disappeared from the jewels and Kurama was gone. Rias and Naruto looked at each other before sighing and leaning back in their seats. I wish I could do that too. Ditto. Click click zoom IYAAAN, devil. What the hell are you thinking? Azazel looked up from his tablet and found himself surrounded by his students while taking the train back to their home. Issei, Kaneko, and Gasper stood to the side while Rias and Naruto took the front to chew him out. The fallen angel raised his brow innocently. Why whatever do you mean? You know what we mean, opie dragon? You seriously created a kids show? About boobs? Really? What would you have wanted me to make it about? Not boobs. We don't need more children like Issei in the world. EGH. Kaneko shuddered at the thought. It would be perv-ageddon. Okay, look. Azazel put his device down and faced the kids honestly. The entertainment down here is very limited. We are privileged because we have an access to the human world, which has an abundance of entertainment forms. The people in hell aren't so lucky, just getting to watch the rating games and updates about their class system. We live in a new age, and in that new age we need to symbols and new ways to reach people. Searsex and I decided we would make a hero people could get behind, using something with an established history and legend such as the Red Dragon Emperor, and give the people hope. All we're trying to do is unify our divided world through something we can share together. With boobs. With boobs, yes. Why not boobs? Issei spoke up and shrugged. I mean, they're pretty damn great. Is it so bad that they help us bring people together? Yes, damn it. IAMDDRAIG. The Red Dragon Emperor. I struck fear into the hearts of mortals and immortals alike. I cracked the very earth and tore open the heavens with my supreme power. And now I'm being reduced to a marketing ploy centered around tits. Are you insane? WAHHHHHHHHHHHH. Issei panicked hearing his all-powerful dragon partner weep and cry from his gauntlet. It's okay, Diedrich. Just imagine how famous you'll be. Shut up. I'm gonna be a booby dragon. I don't want to deal with boobies. It's true. He is. Kaneko said. Way to destroy your partner, Issei-senpai. Kaneko-chan, you aren't helping. I can't possibly make it any worse than you have. Rias turned on the fallen angel and snarled. I swear if I become affiliated with your silly series because I have large breasts, then I will make your life an eternal torture. She stomped off with everyone but Naruto following her. Oops. Azazel snickered and looked up at Naruto. She's not gonna be happy when she sees the marketing campaign. Her tits are gonna be everywhere. I can't believe you made a TV show. Naruto remarked as he shook his head in disgust. Well, could be worse. At least you aren't writing porn books like a certain other old pervert I know. Azazel chuckled and went back to work on his tablet as things calmed down. Naruto walked away and rejoined the others, trying to ease Ria's fears while Issei consoled his partner. The Governor General's eyebrow perked in interest. Books, Omake. Culture shock, video games. Okay, I think I'm finally starting to get the hang of it. Naruto stared at the screen intently while tightly gripping the controller in his hands. His chuckle sounded almost deranged as he talked down to the girl in his lap. You won't be beating me this time, Kaneko? You ready? She didn't say anything. She was so cocky she didn't even find it necessary to engage in trash talk. Oh, you are going down. The screen faded away and two characters appeared ready to fight each other. Naruto panicked, realizing that somehow the match had started without them picking fighters, but he quickly focused up and started mashing buttons. One of the characters on screen moved when he did, and he knew that was his fighter. Okay, watch for the punches, I know to watch out for them. Come on, faster, she's gaining the advantage, I'm trying, damn it, she's just so fast. A final kick struck his character across the face and resulted in a total knockout. Naruto's body relaxed and he sighed defeatedly. Alright. Damn it, you win again, Kaneko. But I seriously think I've gotten a little better, don't you? Where is she? She left for the bathroom while you were muttering to yourself about how stupid this game is and how you weren't going to keep failing in it. You were so focused you didn't even realize she was gone. So I wasn't even fighting her? Why didn't you say something? I wanted to, but then I thought it was funny how you were slowly losing your sanity because you couldn't beat your junior in a stupid game, so I stayed quiet. I'm back, Kaneko said as she rounded around the couch and jumped back up to sit on his lap. She noticed his shocked expression and titled her head cutely. Senpai, is something wrong? Kaneko, I think I picked a fight with a computer at really hard difficulty, he said, showing his junior his control as he tried to rationalize what just happened. It was super hard and it moved just like you, and I tried to do some combinations like you showed me, but nothing worked. I think my controller is busted or something. Kaneko looked down at his controller before looking up. Senpai, I deactivated our controllers before I left for the bathroom. I thought you heard me tell you that while you were muttering the combo directions I showed you earlier. The blonde stared down at the Nekomata blankly. Beat the fight. When you don't press a button for a while, the screen changes to show you a quick clip of gameplay. She pointed to the screen as the title faded away and the same fighters started the exact same match again. You weren't fighting. You were just mashing your controller pointlessly to the clip. Oh wow, it was just embarrassing earlier, but now it is heartbreaking. I think this is the kind of shame where you just have to crawl away and die somewhere. Naruto. I don't like this game. Devil.